It's time for Twit This Week in Tech. What a great panel this week. Christina Warren's here. She'll tell us about her brand new job. Wesley Faulkner's also here from Single Store. We're going to also talk to Dan Morin of sixcolors.com. Wyze cameras, they've let us all down. Would you ever buy another Wyze? The Lapsus gang turns out to be a bunch of UK school kids. E3, it's all over. And Jack Dorsey apologizes for his role in creating the big bad internet. It's all coming up next and a whole lot more on Twit.
Podcasts you love.
From people you trust.
This is Twit.
This is Twit, This Week in Tech, episode 869, recorded Sunday, April 3rd, 2022. The kids are all right. This Week in Tech is brought to you by Our Crowd. Our Crowd helps accredited investors invest early in pre-IPO companies alongside professional venture capitalists. Join the fastest growing venture capital investment community at ourcrowd.com/twit. And by Nareva. Traditional audio conferencing systems can entail lots of components. Installation can take days, and you might not get the mic coverage you need. That's complex, expensive. But Nareva Audio is easy to install and manage, no technicians required, and you get true full room coverage. Now that's easy economical. Learn more at nareva.com. And by Wealthfront. To start building your wealth and get your first $5,000 managed free for life, go to wealthfront.com/twit. And by Podium. Join more than 100,000 businesses that already use Podium to streamline their customer interactions. Get started for free at podium.com/twit or sign up for a paid Podium account and get a free credit card reader. Restrictions apply. It's time for Twit This Week in Tech, the show where we cover the week's tech news. Got a great panel. Gonna be fun today. Dan Morin's here from sixcolors.com. Science fiction author, dmorin.com. You got a new novel coming out in June. Is this a continuation of the series, or you got to start a new series?
No, this one's a continuation. This is book 3 in the current series. I'm super excited to have a book 3 in this series. It's always nice when another one pops in there.
Cold War series.
Yeah, that's right. I'm very excited. July 22nd. Gosh, I should know that, shouldn't I?
No, that's good. You don't need to know it. We need to know it so we can get it. Actually, it's cool because, like any good programmer, you started with book 0.
Sure. Yeah. Boy. Well, you want to avoid those off by one errors, right?
Yes, exactly.
Yeah.
Although the 0.5 is throwing me a little bit here, but so it's a array of floats, I guess. I don't know. 1.5. So when you say third book, it isn't really, is it? You've got one.
Yeah,
two,
there's
three.
a whole complicated story behind that. I switched publishers, basically, is the short version, and so we moved on, and so what was originally book 2 became book 1 in the new series. So I kind of try to stick with that, but it's people ask a lot.
On the front, it says the Galactic Cold War Book 3. That's all.
So we're going with that.
Go with that, baby. Can't wait. Can't wait. I like series. I have to say, I really enjoy series. I'm in the middle of the Babaverse right now, which is it's kind of fun series, and it's nice because I don't know, sci-fi lends itself to serialization, I guess, and
get a chance to really develop some themes. I think it's the same reason like TV should, it's the golden age of TV, right? Like people like that sort of long form storytelling, and I think a series of books is the closest you can kind of get to that in the literature world. So.
Yeah. I think we're learning that it's better to develop a character over a longer period of time. Speaking of characters, Christina Warren's here. Brand new job for Film Girl. Now a senior dev advocate at GitHub. Yay!
Indeed. Yes.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much. I really appreciate it. I'm really, really excited.
Is it a new job, though? I mean, Microsoft owns GitHub.
Okay, so this is a common thing. This has come up a lot, and I've kind of tried to joke about it online. I'm like, it's people like, you're being so dramatic. You were saying you were leaving Microsoft and like you went down the street. Granted, maybe a little dramatic. It's kind of like Schrodinger's, like Microsoft, like depending on like like what you're looking at the box, is it or is it not? Because here's the situation. Obviously, yes, Microsoft is the parent company, but it's run independently. So there's a different email system. I have a different payroll system. I have different health benefits.
All right.
Like
So
different
it's pretty
login,
independent.
different badge. Yeah.
Will you be talking to the same people? Sort of. Developers all use
Yeah,
GitHub.
I mean, yeah, exactly. So, I mean, it's a similar audience, but it's a little bit broader. Whereas, like with Microsoft, I was working for Azure, the Azure side, and I was focusing on Linux, and so I wasn't, and I never. I think no one on that team's purview has only been to target, Azure users, wanting to target all developers, but hoping that they might find reasons to use Azure. Whereas GitHub, it's a lot more broad. It's like it doesn't matter, like what cloud you're on, or if you're self-hosting, or what the situation is. It's about, creating the best tools and experiences and community for developers.
I'm a huge GitHub fan. Use it all the time. So this is great. I'm excited for you. I think it's a
Thank
perfect
you so much.
fit. I'm so glad you're there.
Yeah, no, I'm super excited, and I feel like it's a really great fit too. So because it brings in a lot of the things that I've loved over the years, and the strong community component is something that I'm really, really psyched about.
We also have Wesley Faulkner on the panel. It's always great to see Wesley, head of community at Single Store. It's good to see. How's everything going, Wesley? You're wearing your blue blockers. That's good. Got to protect the eyes.
Yeah, I talked about how like life is challenging, but there's still like some highlights. We just got back from the Twin Cities, the Mall of America, celebrating my daughter's birthday.
Is that where she wanted to go for her birthday? The Mall of America.
That's where she wanted to go. We spent the night in a fancy
That's
hotel.
So
She loves pools, and we went on rides and roller coasters. Got her a couple purses and some clothes. That was her choice, and she enjoyed it so much. And
How
so
old
it
is
was
she?
Great. I am reluctant to put it out there.
Well,
but,
she's not 30. That's my daughter's birthday.
No,
It was
no.
just a couple of days
I'll
ago.
just say that
turned 30.
she's younger than 8 and older than 6.
I think Abby would have. Okay.
I'll let you do
good.
the math.
That's good. Okay, that narrows it down. No, Abby's 30, and she did not want to go to the Mall of America. But had she asked, maybe when she was about that age, we went to the American Girl Doll Museum in Chicago.
Oh yeah. Okay, that would have. I would have been into that.
Yeah.
That's pretty great.
She
But
had-
I would have been into Mall of America too. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, they're both good, honestly. But she had cut all the hair off of one of her American Girl dolls, so we had to pay a visit to the hospital where they put new hair in.
Yes. Oh yeah. I remember this. So I used to get the catalogs because it was like the Pleasant Company, and then it was the American Girl Company or whatever.
Yes,
But they used to
exactly.
send the big catalogs, and in the back they would have a thing like if you had to send your doll to the doll hospital.
Yes.
And mine, I took care of it, but my neighbors, we had all 4 of the original ones, but between us, one of them had some sort of problem, and the doll came back. I'll never forget. It came back like in a hospital gown and with like a doll size like get well balloon. It was pretty great.
We
honestly.
also, they have a tea room there where you have chairs for big people and they have little chairs for the dolls. And they serve tea to the dolls. Somewhere I have a picture of me sitting there. And then afterwards we went to a Chicago Cubs game and I got to hold the doll.
Yes.
It was her and her best friend and her best friend's dad. It was quite an outing. I'll never forget it.
Oh, that's sweet.
Yeah. Actually, I'm glad
There is a Build-A-Bear in the Mall of America.
That's
and that
probably-
line
yeah.
was always around the corner.
That's so funny.
The whole time.
That's so funny. Wow. What we do for our kids, right? Anything. Anything. Do you have kids, Dan? You don't have kids.
I do not currently.
No. Most science fiction authors, in fact, are single. No, I'm just kidding.
I am married.
I'm
That's
just
all right.
kidding.
Come on.
I'm just teasing. It's just a joke. Don't take it. No, I'm just kidding. Boy, I was a little upset with Wyze this week. Wyze. I've been recommending their cameras. I thought they were the best thing ever up your way, Christina, in Seattle, because they were selling what would normally be very expensive cameras and other electronic products for remarkably low prices, like $20 and $30. And they were good stuff. They sell now sprinkler controllers and noise-canceling headphones and earbuds. But it was the Wyze Cam #1 that was the amazing first product. Turns out it was hackable for 3 years. They did nothing about it. They didn't tell anybody. They knew that hackers could remotely access your camera. Without much fanfare, earlier this year, they discontinued it without a full explanation. Eventually, they sent out a little note to Wyze Cam version 1 owners saying, hey, friends, it's a new year. That comes with some important updates. Protecting you and your security, always top of mind. For us to do that, we'll need you to update your Wyze app, update your camera firmware, and oh, by the way, if it's version 1, throw it out. No, they don't say that, but that's what you should do because there are no updates version 1. Now, there is some debate over how hackable it was, but hackable at all, and if it's known to the company and they don't tell you, is a big deal.
I didn't know if it was debatable, but they did say that it wasn't just intercepting a stream, but actually reading the memory card.
Yes.
And so when you have the trigger set up where it only triggers useful events, that's way more of a pot of interesting information rather than just tapping into a random webcam
It's
stream.
everything the camera has recorded.
Right, and specifically things that trigger it, which are the things that people want to see, right? People aren't combing through hours and hours of footage to try and find like, oh, now I found the 1 minute in this footage that's interesting. They're getting the highlight reel.
Now, I first became aware of it with Sean Hollister's article in The Verge. I'm done with Wyze. I'm throwing them all out. And he got a little bit wrong. Wyze reached out to tell him that there was, basically security through obscurity. In order for the attack to work, it'd need an initial camera ID, which is a non-predictable string that can only be acquired if you're on the same network as the device. So hackers would have to camp outside, get into your Wi-Fi, for instance, and see it that way, or perhaps get into your house. But it doesn't eliminate the evil maid attack. And I don't care. Vulnerable is vulnerable. And, I mean, I guess this is an interesting question. Christina, how much should we hold Wyze to the feet to the fire for this?
I mean, I think that if you make the decision that you are not going to update a product for whatever reason, that's one thing. And I think that especially given what type of product this is, that's customers should probably look at it and be like, okay, well, I'm never going to buy anything from you again if this is how you do it. But the fact that it seems like they waited so long,
3 years,
3 years before even alerting people. That to me, when that's the unacceptable part. If you don't have the money or the time, the resources, or the engineering talent, or whatever the case may be, to update your old product, fine. We can critique that, but whatever. But to not even bother to let people know, hey, this security device, which you are selling as a security device that is capturing pretty sensitive information, has vulnerabilities where people could take over it and could do things to it, and you're not telling anyone. That's not acceptable at all. I think we should definitely hold their feet to the fire.
There's also questions about Bitdefender because they learned about this vulnerability in March of 2019, notified Wyze. Normally, with a security company, there's a responsible disclosure agreement where you wait a certain amount of time, usually 3 months. And if the company doesn't fix it, you then disclose it because it's only a matter of time before hackers discover it. If Bitdefender could have discovered it. For some reason, Bitdefender decided not to do that. And so I'm not. Bitdefender's PR director told The Verge, our findings were so serious, our decision, regardless of our usually 90-day with grace period extensions policy, was that publishing this report without Wyze's acknowledgement and mitigation was going to expose potentially millions of customers with unknown implications. And since the vendor didn't have, as far as we knew, a security process, we just delayed publishing. And, that's one of the arguments for never disclosing. But at the same time, it's if you could find a Bitdefender, couldn't bad guys Yeah.
Yeah,
Right.
and I think it's also interesting that, like, as they point out, Wyze didn't seem to have a security framework in place, which is a strange decision for a company that's, making smart home tech, right? We all know that smart home tech is a big vector for cyber attack. So it feels like you would have this in place. And I can't help but think, the fact that Wyze has been able to sell these devices at such a low cost, and generally we had felt previously like good quality, but it makes you think, well, there are corners perhaps being cut here or there, and it feels maybe a little fly by night at times.
It's puzzling to me, I have to say.
The Wyze, their whole deal, especially with the Wyze Camera 1, was that they didn't make any of the hardware. They got cheap hardware from Chinese manufacturers, and only thing that they did was the software. So they wrote their own software. And so knowing that they were willing to wash their hands of at least that part is almost like what is their expertise at that point? Because they are just now just passing on just the cheap, like the stereotypical cheap Chinese knockoff hardware stuff where it could be really, really like hacked or not done in a way that it was secure. And so now knowing that they are in themselves, like at least at that point in time, did not do all the safeguards needed to really protect their users and make sure that things were done at the high quality that they claimed, it's almost like I wish that they had at that point of time been outed. And that most likely that would have killed the company, sadly. But now these cameras are everywhere, and people have them set up, and people are relying on them. And this specific article, even though now it's widely released, how many of those cameras will hear about this?
Right.
The people who are operating these cameras, and so they probably would not have had them if this came out 3 years ago.
I feel bad because I've been telling people for many years to buy Wyze cameras, back to those $20 version 1 cameras. We even have a few. Is this bad enough that you don't recommend Wyze ever again because, clearly they don't care about security? Or is this a mistake that could easily be made by a new young company? They decided because you'd have to have access to the network, it wasn't that big a deal. I mean, we disclose lots of flaws that require physical access to the machine. It still should be disclosed.
Well, yeah, I mean, and deciding that it's not, making the decision for your customers that it's not that big a deal strikes me as the thing that's kind of feels uncomfortable, right? Like that should be up to the owners of these cameras to decide whether or not that's an acceptable level of risk.
Yeah, I never
Not
hold it against
telling
a
them.
company if they announce it and say, and I guess Wyze didn't have a way to push updates, but they could have sent, they could have said down, take that mini SD card, copy this file to it. Maybe they had no way to update it. I don't know.
It's also just like
pushed it
every
to the app.
software. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, every software company, to your point, Leo, about places not holding it against companies. Like every software company has security
Flaws
problems.
happen.
Every single one, right? It's never not going to be a case. So it's all in how you handle it.
And of course, this underscores the very good advice Stacey Higginbotham on our Twig show gives. She's an IoT expert, and many others. Do not buy an IoT device that doesn't have a security framework, that doesn't have a way that patches can be applied, especially, ideally, pushed to the device. And Google's Nest cameras, they can push patches. They have. The Ring doorbell, they can push patches. They have. Stuff happens, mistakes happen, but ideally the company should be able to repair that device even if you're not paying attention. And apparently Wyze did not. I don't know what their current situation is.
I mean, I think the fact that it was 3 years, I mean, for me personally, I would say that this becomes like a deal breaker, right? Like if you wanted to say 3 months, 6 months, we're investigating, we're trying to figure this out, given the severity of what this is, we don't want someone to create a 0-day sort of click and whatever thing. Because if someone's local, if it was exposed to the open internet, which some people's configurations might be, that could be a problem, whatever. I would still have a problem with this, but I could be more sympathetic, new company and whatnot. But this number of years of,
That's a long time. Yeah.
This is a long time when you're now on like, what version are they on other products now? Version 4?
Version 3, I think. Yeah.
Version 3. So you release subsequent products that don't have this issue, and in their own explanation of this, they said, okay, well, the small memory amount, which was the whole reason we had to go to version 2, this is why we haven't been able to update version 1. Okay, well, if you know this, and if you're running into this issue, then that means you need to alert people. In my opinion, then and there, you need to say, hey, this is a problem, this can't be updated, this has a vulnerability, and you need to offer some sort of trade-in, and you need to offer some sort of amount of credit. If you don't, like a goodwill thing that says, okay, here's, like $50 off, a version 2 or something, right? Like, or at the very least, because they are a low price point, if people want to get mad, then they could have that say, okay, well, I was only spending, $20 a pop on these things. Fine. But you got to let people know. And the fact that you didn't, and as more of these things might be on the market, that just becomes, to me, I don't think I could ever in good conscience recommend this again. Not the least without like a very full, a complete security audit of their framework, and also of what devices they are, bringing in, what ODMs.
That's a good idea.
They're doing,
bring in a third party and do a vulnerability, and they do have a whole page at Wyze.com on how to report a security vulnerability, and presumably the newer devices have enough memory to do an update and things like that. I guess maybe there's a secondary moral, which is you shouldn't pay $20 for a camera and expect it to be secure.
Get what you pay for.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, and I think to me that almost is on the one hand, I think that makes a lot of common sense. I think the reason why this is troubling is because this was a company that their whole, raison d'etre was to say, we can sell it at these cut rate prices, but we're not skimping on the software. We're actually taking that seriously. Right. We're doing this right. So their entire sales pitch was basically, yes, we're the Chinese knockoff price, but we're actually doing real work on the software end. And it turns out that's just not true, at least based on what we've seen. I mean, at the very least from the security standpoint, if you're going 3 years without even letting people know that there's this vulnerability, I don't know.
And I want to stress that the issue, I think, if I read correctly, was that it's the web server making or exposing the mounted drive to the web. And so from my modest opinion, I feel that this is something where they could have fixed it, but they chose not to fix it. So I'm gonna be very, very skeptical about them saying that they could not fix this. I don't think that they've gone through the trouble to fix it, and it probably would have been a lot of rewrite in order to make sure that that does work. But I want to stress that I don't think the issue is that they could not have fixed it. And keep in mind, the same time 3 years ago, they were releasing all the products that you just showed when you showed Wyze, and the headphones,
they've got a gun safe now.
Whatever.
That's great.
Yeah, vacuum cleaners, whatever. All that stuff that they're accelerating, which they are choosing to ignore or push this off instead of actually fixing.
Yeah.
So that was a conscious choice of where they put their resources.
Founded by former Amazon employees. I don't know. We'll see how they. I think they're gonna need to do, as Zoom did and others have done, kind of mea culpa and step forward and say, look, this is what we're doing, so this can't happen again before we can trust them.
Absolutely. Or even, I mean, it's interesting because I look at this and I'm like, this even feels, remember the issue that Western Digital had last year where some of their old connected drives that hadn't been updated and had been end of life for years, people were able to remotely wipe them because they were connected to the internet?
Right.
Do you remember that?
Yeah.
And it was a terrible situation. It was a huge black mark for a big company like Western Digital, and I thought that they'd handled it fairly poorly, to be honest with you. But at least they were going out of their way once it became clear how bad it was to instruct everyone unplug these things from the internet. Like, to me, in addition to having to do, I think, like the full Zoom, apology tour, they need to be doing a much better job getting the word out, because it's not like they don't have everyone's email. Because the whole point of how these companies work, and one of the reasons they can get the economies of scale somewhat the way that they are, although I bet they're losing a bunch of money on this anyway, is by getting every single bit of information from all their purchasers and selling that. So it's not like they don't have the emails of everyone who bought one of these things. So why are you not emailing people loud and clear saying, take this off the internet?
You don't even need the email. you have to use the app in order to view the camera.
You can push the app.
Oh yeah, so you could just you should just push an update to the app. Absolutely.
Yeah, and have a big red banner. Hey, I noticed you're still using a V1. I've turned it, I've deconfigured it, and took it off the internet for you. Yeah. Please read more. Click this link.
They actually did that. Same year, a few months later, they said, "Oops, somebody got our server information, and I think 12 million records were leaked. So we're just going to reset you right now, and you're going to have to change the password." I mean, so they have a history of oops and fixing it. This was the oops and not fixing it, and not even admitting it, which really bugs the heck out of me. I mean, I'm sorry. You should take this story and write your story and make your apologies. I just hate it when they just no. Pay no attention to that. Pay no attention to that. Speaking of hacking, we now know that Lapsus was a bunch of 16-year-olds.
Yes, which I love. I have to give him huge credit because my favorite 16-year-old, I'm kidding, he's not 16, but he's been a reporter since he was 16. William Turtnett at Bloomberg was one of the people who helped really crack that down.
We saw his scoop. I didn't realize he had started when he was 16. That's very interesting.
Yeah, no. This is why I was. He's one of the best security reporters, and
awesome.
This beat he's fantastic. Yeah, so he worked at the Daily Dot with my husband years and years and years ago. When again he was like 16, and then when we hired him at Gizmodo, he was still in high school. So he was a senior in high school, and he would he would be on Slack. He was like, okay, I gotta go. I gotta take a test, and then he'd come back like 45 minutes later and blog.
Wow.
Just an incredible reporter. But I was joking with him. I was like, so I see you can still get your friends, to give you scoops. But yeah, a bunch of 16-year-olds, terrifying, but also, I mean, I guess the kids are all right. I don't know.
The kids are all right in one way. They're going to be able to get jobs. Let's put it that way. Lapsus' first LAPSUS $, which tells you a little bit about their motivations, first surfaced December of 2021 with an extortion demand on Brazil's Ministry of Health. I think, as I remember, they released a bunch of records there. They broke into NVIDIA, released source code from NVIDIA. They broke into Samsung. They broke into Vodafone. They broke into Microsoft, released the source code for a bunch of Microsoft products, including Teams, and I think Windows as well, although Microsoft said they had disrupted the download before it could finish, so they didn't get all of it. And then maybe most notoriously, they were the group that broke into Okta. Okta says they didn't get very far. Yeah, but that's a big one because it's a security firm that's used by many other companies for single sign-on in their security. So we're starting to learn a little bit more. Okta was two teenagers, 16 and 17 in the UK. They've both been released on bail because what are you going to do, right? Both teenagers charged with 3 counts of unauthorized access with intent to impair operation of or hinder access to a computer, 2 counts of fraud by false representation. I'll explain why that. Those are the charges. The father of the 16-year-old said, "We just thought he was in the basement playing games." We were shocked. I say shocked to find out. Obviously fairly skilled. Around the same time as news of the arrests emerged, according to the BBC, Lapsus told its 45,000 followers on Telegram that some of its members would be taking a vacation. On Wednesday, they started posting again after the arrest, releasing stolen material from a software development company in Argentina. So the kids are all right. I like that. Lapsus did the same thing as the SolarWinds hackers, breaking through two-factor in a couple of interesting ways. One of the ways, of course, two-factor works, and this is very popular. Microsoft uses it. GitHub uses it now, by the way, I noticed.
Often.
Yeah. Where it sends a push to your phone and you approve and it logs in. So one of the tricks is called MFA bombing, multi-factor bombing, where you just keep hitting it so that the victim keeps getting pop-ups over and over saying, do you approve? Do you approve? And finally just says, oh, screw it, I approve. And apparently that works. There is also a sort of slow motion MFA bombing where you do 1 or 2 prompts a day, but apparently there's still a good chance, according to a red team hacker that was talking to Ars Technica, that people will still say, yeah. You can also call the target. I mean, this is more of a social, this is probably where they got the charge of impersonation. It's sort of a social attack, pretending to be, you call the target saying, hey, I'm with GitHub, Christina. I need to send you an MFA to make sure we're all set up. So I'm going to send you an MFA just to prove it, okay? We'll just make sure that your single sign-on's working. And, Christina, you're new at the company.
Right.
You think, okay, yeah, sure, I'll wait. Oh, yeah, I see it. Thank you. And you hit okay. MFA bombing. It works, kids. In fact, Lapsus, of course, did not invent this. It's been going on for some time, but there you go. Don't even two-factor is not necessarily enough to protect you against.
It makes me wonder,
teenagers.
if there was no pandemic, would we be talking about this?
Do you think he should have been studying social studies instead? He was hacking Brazil. Is that what you think?
Yeah, I mean, there's a lot of time in the basement, right? So
I don't know. I mean, even outside the pandemic, I remember being a teenager, like in the 90s, and like being online. My parents had no idea what I was.
They don't know what you're doing.
With a 2400 modem, how much trouble can you really get up to? Probably.
Right. But the time where you're at school, where like, oh, I can't wait to get home to try this. Now you're home all the time. Like, what's stopping you?
Totally.
That's true.
This is a Daily Mail, so consider the source. But according to Daily Mail, he's autistic and enrolled in a special ed school in Oxford. His father told the BBC, "My son is very good on computers." But if he's autistic, maybe he doesn't really think of the consequences. He just says, "Oh, this is cool. What I can do. Look what I can do." And maybe some other kids took advantage of his skills. 7 suspects were arrested. The kid lives with his mother. The father, who does not live with him, says, I had never heard about this until recently. He never talked about hacking, but he's very good on computers, spends a lot of time on the computer. I always thought he was playing games. We're going to try and stop him from going on computers from now on.
As a person who is neurodivergent myself, I would say most likely being autistic would not prevent you from understanding the severity of the issue.
He knew what he was doing.
Absolutely.
It might make
Most
you
likely,
a victim, though, of others, yes?
But what it could be is that you might have issues with social structures and cues.
Right.
And if this was a defined way that was spoken about before, where you can get cred with your peer group, then that might
Makes
be
you vulnerable.
an incentive to probably do this type of activity.
Yes. Well, the kids are all right. That's the motto today for this segment of the show. Thank you, Christina. Let's take a little break. Christina Warren is here now, senior dev advocate for the lovely GitHub. Woohoo! When Microsoft bought GitHub, I was like, oh, bummer. But they've really been, great. They're good stewards in the sense they let GitHub do what GitHub's doing, support it. I think GitHub's bigger and better than ever, to be honest with you, right? Yeah.
I mean, I think so, definitely. I mean, I wouldn't have joined otherwise, but yeah totally.
Yeah. You were saying something interesting, Wesley. You said that how many developers don't use any version control at all?
I think around 30%.
Wow.
Or so, like a third, close to it.
They can't be working on teams, though, right? I mean, you kind of have to use version control if you're working on a distributed team.
Keep in mind that developers are all around the world,
right.
Different types of infrastructures, different types of work.
Maybe some companies
don't
want them to, check their code in anywhere. Just keep it on your hard drive. I don't know.
I don't know.
I don't know. I use it for everything. Dan, do you use it? What do you do? Do you do version control for your novels?
I do not, other than things have sort of autosave. I've seen people who do, though. I've seen people who keep their writing in GitHub repositories. It's not
very
uncommon.
Early on when Gina and I wrote our first book. Gina Smith and I wrote our first book in 96 or 7. there was no Git at the time, but there was SVN.
Subversion,
Right.
yeah.
And we really looked at using SVN because we were both writing, so that you would check in your edits. And it's actually a great idea if you have multiple authors. I guess if you're a single author, you don't need it so much. But
Not as much. It's true.
Yeah.
No,
Dan is
for
not
years,
single.
what I've wanted, Dan is not single. For years, what I've wanted is I've wanted like,
You're all alone, right, Dan? So you don't need version. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I don't need to manage anything.
Go ahead, Christina.
no, what I was going to say is for years, what I've wanted is I've wanted like Word to have like a Git based, like editing flow, right? Because
Revert.
tracking, because tracking changes, you can do a number of things, but it's not quite the same thing. Like I would
not
really
quite right,
love to be able to just look at like the XML structure, of whatever makes up a Word document or PowerPoint or anything like that, and be able to approve and dismiss and like treat it like Git. Like that to me would be the greatest thing ever.
And if you don't use Git, you don't have my favorite command, git blame.
Yes.
It's really important to be able, even if you're blaming yourself, why did I change that guy's name to Arbuthnot? That was I want to revert. Our show today brought to you by Our Crowd. A lot of us sit and watch the tech world go by and think, I knew that company was going to be big. I wish I had invested in it early on. And then we some of us see our peers, people like Kevin Rose, who has the humble brag. Yeah, I got in on Twitter early. I was in on the angel round, and you think, boy, how do you get that kind of information? Well, Our Crowd is one way to do this. This is why I was very interested when they came to us. I said, I like this. Now, I have to say right up front, this is for the, when you've done all the right investing, and now you're thinking, I would like to do something that's a little more high risk, but a little more high reward. I would like to get into venture capital. So Our Crowd is a venture capital company that has deal flows. When you join Our Crowd, you're joining the fastest growing venture capital investment community. What are they looking for? Not post IPOs, not post exit. They're looking for the very earliest startups. That's the place where you can leverage so much. You can get in with a small amount of money and get so much value. If you're very early at Facebook or Twitter or one of these companies, that's when you get the maximum returns. Our Crowd is constantly analyzing companies across the entire global private market, okay, before public, and they look at companies, they're looking for those with the greatest growth potential. When they find them, they bring them to you in all kinds of areas: personalized medicine, cybersecurity. Right now, they're very big on higher education. Students are right now losing $3.8 billion in earnings every year by dropping out. Our Crowd is identifying innovators so you can invest when growth potential is the greatest early on. Now, I should be very clear. You have to be an accredited investor to do this. Now, different countries have different rules. By the way, it's completely free to join Our Crowd, ourcrowd.com/twit. Ourcrowd, get it, .com/twit. And say what country you're in, and I'll explain what the minimums are in terms of income to make yourself an accredited investor. Already, accredited investors at Our Crowd have invested over $1 billion in growing tech companies. In the portfolio, 21 unicorns. Many Our Crowd members have benefited from over 40 exits, IPOs or sales of portfolio companies. If you're an accredited investor, you can get involved in a single company deal as little as $10,000. You don't have to have millions to invest. If you want, they have funds too, where they combine a bunch of different investments. You can get in an Our Crowd fund for as little as $50,000. But again, you have to be an accredited investor, and the minimum investment is $10,000. So this may not be for everybody. But do go to ourcrowd.com/twit and enter, the country you're from, so you can then find out whether you can participate. One of the things we were talking about education that Our Crowd is really liking right now is EduNav. They have patented technology that uses machine learning and combinatorial algorithms to guide students along the optimum path to graduation, to kind of keep kids in school. So this is great. It's already used by 20 different universities and colleges. One college actually doubled their graduation rate with EduNav. So it's kind of proven technology, but it's very early. So now's the time you can get in. Invest today if you want at Our Crowd. All I can say is go to ourcrowd.com/twit. Invest in EduNav. You can join for free, OURCROWD, ourcrowd.com/twit. Join the fastest growing venture capital investment community around. Our Crowd, OURCROWD.com/twit. Thank you, Our Crowd, for supporting Twit. Let's see. Oh, there's so many things going on. E3 has been canceled. Boy, at the last minute. Holy cow. They had planned an in-person event after having no event in 2020 due to COVID-19, a digital-only event in 2021. For some reason, the ESA has confirmed they're going to cancel for 2022. We are looking forward to presenting E3 to fans around the world live from Los Angeles in 2023. I got to say, this may not be just COVID.
Yeah.
No, this doesn't make sense at all.
I think it might be over for E3. What do you think?
I think E3 is dead. For them to cancel the slate, especially because GDC just took place, in person.
The Game Developers Conference, and that was fine.
And that was okay. That was in Moscone. South by Southwest has gone on. Like, things are happening, and I could understand.
Even CES in January.
Exactly. Although obviously that was much
reduced.
Much reduced because of the Omicron outbreak. Really changed the tenor on that. But for them to be canceling it in April and what it was supposed to be in June, right? That's usually when it is.
Yeah.
To me, that means they didn't have enough vendors. Like, they didn't have enough booths sold. Is the only thing I can think of on that, is that they had something where they had to get out of their commitment. I don't know.
Understand in other areas of the world, COVID is raging, and, the BA2 variant is a cause for concern, obviously. But that's all been baked into everything for 6 months.
Right.
Mask mandates are being lifted everywhere. It's weird. I feel weird, but we're going to restaurants, we're going to concerts, we're going out, everybody's out. I don't see masks anymore. I have to say, COVID is just an excuse on this one. And to say, we'll see you in 2023 is a Hail Mary. I just don't see it.
I wonder at this point, are they trying to cash in on some sort of insurance? What is, because there are deadlines to when you have to cancel an event in the proximity of something to be able to
this might have been the last chance, and so, you think? Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it kind of reminds me of back in the day with Macworld Expo, which kind of over time lost its relevance.
You just knew
more
it was
and more.
Going, yeah.
Well, and it's hard to imagine quite who is E3's audience. It's competing against a lot of other different conferences that draw people in for different things, like PAX, the various
PAX is still huge as far as I can tell.
So I think they struggled, right? Because it was not, for a long time, E3 was only sort of industry, right? Wasn't it? It wasn't really open to the public. So I think they kind of walled themselves off so long that by the time they're like, oh no, the industry is not enough to keep us afloat. We need to open this up in order to stay viable. It was kind of too late, and a lot of other conferences have sort of eaten their lunch.
I'm looking at numbers from the IGN E3 wiki, and attendance had been going up. 2014 it was almost 50,000. 2019 it was 66,000. There was no 2020, and obviously 2021 was canceled as well.
But even though attendance is going up, you've lost some of your big tent poles, right? Like Sony pulls out, Nintendo's not there. Microsoft shows up intermittently. Various studios are there. So similar to what Dan was talking about with Macworld, right? Like, Macworld was kind of on its last legs basically as soon as Apple announced, and what was it? I think it was 2009 that was going to be their last year. And at that point, like, it carried on for another couple of years, but that was the anchor. And at this point, the anchors are not really there for E3, in addition to the fact that, there are the direct-to-consumer shows that are around and the direct-to-developer shows. So, yeah.
Well, and kind of like Apple, it's like they can go, the big companies, your Microsofts, your Sonys, and Nintendos can go direct to the consumer. Exactly. Right? They don't need a trade show to show off their latest games or their latest consoles. People are going to show up to hear them no matter what. So they don't need E3 anymore. And like Christina said, if you don't have them holding down your tent poles, then your tent's blown away.
Yeah. And it's not like gaming is not on a tear. I mean, Elden Ring, easily, one of the best-selling games of all time, I would suspect by now. Certainly very, very positive response to that. You can finally get an Xbox Series X. Both Microsoft and Walmart finally have them in stock. It took me a while, Christina. I finally got a Series X.
Yay! Yeah, it's a good system with Game Pass and xCloud, especially.
Yeah.
The Series S actually is a really good one if people just want to stream stuff. I've been.
It's been
recommending
easy to get the Series S, but I wanted all the power.
Oh, I'm with you. That's just been my recommendation to people who might be like, well, I think I'm primarily a PlayStation person, but I might want to get into Game Pass. And I'm like, Series S is not much more than an Apple TV and a lot more powerful.
Good price.
And does more, yep.
Sony is, speaking of merging their PS Now and PS Plus streaming subscriptions to create a 3-tier subscriptions. This is a ridiculously complicated story.
It's so complicated.
I couldn't really figure it out.
I just got
so wrong.
I just got a PS5. It was sort of an early birthday present for my wife. Yeah,
also a great device. I mean, wonderful. Yeah.
And good. I have an Xbox One. I was a longtime Xbox user, and Game Pass has been great on that. And so I almost was like sort of holding off buying some games for the PS5 because like I had seen the rumors about the streaming service, and then it came out, and I'm like, I don't know which of these things would get me the thing I want, right? Like where in this sort of 3-tier subscription do I fit? So I still haven't figured it out, frankly.
So should I try to explain it? No. It's probably not. It's probably not worth it. There's PS Plus Essentials, PS Plus Extra, and PS Plus Premium, which is the top priced. Essentials is essentially the same as what you got today with PS Plus. 2 monthly downloadable games, online multiplayer access, game discounts, and cloud storage. Extra adds 400 PS4 and PS5 games to be downloaded, including God of War, some big names, Mortal Kombat 11, Spider-Man. They're going to add more titles on a regular basis. Then Premium also adds, and maybe this is, it's funny, this is the most expensive part, classic games from PlayStation 1, 2, and the PSP.
I can't help but feel that this is reactionary to the Activision acquisition from Microsoft because of the possibility of losing some of their titles and that drawing on their past bankable
nostalgia
properties that they have, then they were just say, how do we eke out more profit from that in order to make up for the possible future restrictions of some of these AAA titles?
Yeah, that makes sense. There's definitely nostalgia. I mean, anybody who's buying a gaming console these days is likely somebody, an older man in his middle age who has some nostalgia for Kirby and stuff. You know, it's like the good old days. I don't know. I think that's probably the case. Am I wrong?
Yeah, or a kid who can't find a graphics card. I mean, there are varying reasons, but you're right. I think nostalgia is a big one. I think to me, I have to be honest, I feel like the price is wrong on this. I think that if they wanted to be competitive...
It's fairly expensive.
It's expensive.
As much as $10 a month, right?
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? It's like if you're going to get it, you should probably pay for the annual price because it's like I think that it's $60 a year or $10 a month for the lowest tier option, and it's similar in those other things. And I think it's then I think your options annually are $60, $100, $120. Now you probably will have people who will pay, be completists who will be okay with those older retro games that only happen streaming from Sony servers. Incidentally, they haven't invested into having good emulation stuff on the console itself. But I feel like they made it clear they're not going to do day one availability on their flagships for all the studios they own. And Sony's whole thing, I mean, the reason that the PlayStation is such an amazing ecosystem is that first party stuff, right? They're similar to Nintendo in that way, and that they just have a killer exclusive first party lineup. And if you're saying, okay, we're going to cost as much as Game Pass Ultimate, which works on PC and, cloud devices and console, but we're not going to have the day one availability, to me, you can't charge that same price.
Yeah. Yeah.
I agree
Microsoft
with
still has
Christina.
the best subscription. I mean, if you're a serious gamer, I think, with xCloud, yeah?
The only way the
think
price
so.
makes sense is if you have access to other hardware. So if they do the Netflix model, where you
Right,
pay
right,
this
right.
premium and you don't need to have a
You
PlayStation
play it everywhere.
in order
Yeah.
to play it.
Right. Yeah. That, okay.
Makes
Fair
sense.
enough. Yes. And if they did do something like that, which again, like if they brought like an xCloud sort of component where they were like, okay, you don't need, because the way that a lot of their streaming stuff works now is actually you're streaming it off of your home console
Right.
on your
Yeah.
PC, right? Like it's not a real streaming thing. They have the streaming stuff is relegated to a number of games. I think you're right. I think if they did that, where they said, okay, basically, kind of their GeForce Now, xCloud, whatever, competitor, whatever you want to call it, Stadia, I guess. Then, yeah, I think maybe they could charge what they're charging. But as it stands right now, I just feel like $15 a month is too high. I feel like if they'd come in at $10 a month for that option, then you have something that is price competitive, considering you're not going to have the day one releases, which is obviously one of the big appeals of Game Pass.
Actually, by not buying an Xbox Live subscription, the only advantage to that is when I play Elden Ring, I don't see all the ghost players. I don't see those stupid messages that people put all over the place. I just can play the game in peace and quiet without anybody else bothering me. You kids, get out of my Elden Ring. You play? Yeah, you must play it, Christina.
I haven't yet. Brianna and Simone.
I know
both do,
Brianna
but I haven't
loves it.
yet.
Yeah,
They're obsessed, and I haven't, and I'm going to. I've been busy. Like I was trying to close up one job and like start another. But yeah,
You're getting to be a grown up
get
and
there.
all that. No time for
know.
gaming. My goodness.
I know.
Do you have roaches in your Animal Crossing house now? I mean, spider
Yeah, no.
webs?
Oh, definitely. I haven't gone back to Animal Crossing in a while. I need to go in.
It's
and,
funny
and
when
do
you
that,
go
but
in
yeah.
there. There's roaches. There's cockroaches because you haven't been there for a while.
I'm
you
like,
have to
yep,
stomp
I've got to
them.
clean up.
Yeah.
Yep.
It's pretty funny, actually. Yeah, who has time for that anymore, right? We've got jobs.
So busy.
Focusing on our next novel, things like that. We're almost done with Bitcoin. No, I wish, if only. There are 19 million Bitcoin now as of this week, which means there are only 2 million more to make. Although, as you know, with Bitcoin, it gets harder and harder as you get closer and closer to the end. The way it was designed by whoever or whatever Satoshi Nakamoto is that Bitcoin would have a limited number of total coins, around 21 million. And as they were mined, it'd be easy at first, but it would get harder and harder to mine them. All this to avoid inflation. It certainly is a lot harder. We can thank Satoshi for the price of video cards these days. Thank you, Satoshi, whoever you are. The 19 millionth Bitcoin occurred on block 730,000 of the network this on Friday. Only 2 million left. Some estimate it could be 100 years to get those last 2 million. I don't know.
It feels like when they used to have all those things about how many years of fossil fuels there are left.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah,
And then it kept being like,
just
oh, no, we
5
found more.
years.
Yeah.
Don't sweat it, guys.
Yeah.
We're all good.
So Bitcoin fracking is just around the corner. Is that what you're saying?
That's right.
Yeah.
Yes. Yeah.
It's like IP4 address space, right?
Yes,
like we've exhausted it,
We're gonna
but
run
yet
out.
we're still
We're gonna run out.
we've run out, but yet we're still always able to issue people addresses.
It's the
We've
Chicken Little
discovered a
syndrome.
heretofore unknown set of numbers.
Yeah, look at that.
We are. Yeah.
Well, that's interesting. I wonder if it's a natural human tendency to say the sky is falling. We're running out. And then, I mean, yes, I know that because when COVID happened, there was no toilet paper for some reason. So maybe that is a human thing.
What I'm curious about the evolution, if we're thinking ahead, I know that's a 2 million left, yeah. But when we think about where Bitcoin was to where it is now, where you could do it on any moderate kind of PC, and we've moved past that to you have to have a higher powered PC. And then we've moved to the point where if you're serious, you have like custom ASICs to do this. Will we move in the future to a place where you have to be a nation state or
Maybe,
a large tech company like an Amazon or Microsoft in order to have
16-year-old in a basement
or a 16-year-old. Yes.
16-year-old basement
One of those two
control a
options.
data center.
Nothing in between. Nothing in between. So that where if, for instance, if China did a full reversal and said that we are dedicating some severe like computing power.
They could get it done quick
to do this.
Yeah.
And then United States is worried about like a 51% attack or whatever.
Right.
And
right.
they decide, well, in order to keep up with China, we have to do it here too. And then it's like an arms race where then only the biggest actually do run these nodes.
I never even thought of that.
In the future.
Yeah. Wow. The current hash rate is 201.84 exahash per second. Whatever that means. So, yeah, I like that scenario. You should write that first novel, Wesley. The Bitcoin Wars. Yeah.
No. I mean, think about it. Like we do like these, like the Lawrence Livermore, like supercomputer to simulate nuclear explosions or whatever. When there is a large like concerted effort to really worry about the arms race, and speaking of nuclear weapons, this could be a currency race. And so this is not something that's out of the realm of possibility.
But we have learned that the only way to win is not to play. We do know that, right? I think Whopper figured that out way back when.
Or the only way to lose, one of the two.
Yeah.
We'll see.
Yeah. You see, that's the problem is people like you. Let's see. Ubiquiti, I'm not too happy with this, is suing Brian Krebs for $425,000 in damages. You may remember that Ubiquiti had a data breach some time ago. It turned out it was a rogue employee. Ubiquiti says that Krebs' sole source for his article about the breach was that rogue employee. And according to Ubiquiti, Krebs intentionally misled the public about the data breach and the blackmail attempt. Ubiquiti said, no, we promptly notified customers. We told them what to do. We notified the public in the next filing with the SEC, but Krebs intentionally ignored all that in order to drive traffic. Now, I have to say, these kind of lawsuits almost never succeed. You'd have to prove malicious intent on his part. I feel like it's mostly a nuisance suit, but of course Brian's going to have to defend it. And I have a lot of respect for Brian Krebs. I think this does not reflect well on Ubiquiti, to be honest. Although, their side of the story is somewhat damning.
Shout out to a friend of mine or whatever, the DevRel space, Corey Quinn. Glad to see that he was noted in the story.
In a long tweet thread, Corey Quinn, chief cloud economist at the Duckbill Group, calls into question the Ubiquiti lawsuit, said that the law firm representing Ubiquiti, Claire Locke, LLP of Alexandria, Virginia, has a long history of suing media companies. Probably long and unsuccessful, I'm thinking. I can't think of a lawsuit against media companies that succeeded ever since Hulk Hogan defeated the Gawker media with thanks to the millions of Peter Thiel. It's not normally something you succeed in. So, actually, I don't think Hulk Hogan, did he win? Yeah, I did win.
Yeah, no, he won. We went bankrupt. We were bought by Univision. That's the thing that
was
happened.
that in Texas?
Yeah.
No,
Florida.
Florida.
That was in Florida.
Yeah.
Florida.
Oh.
But we found out later Peter Thiel really was...
Peter Thiel had been banking the...
lawsuit by proxy.
The lawsuit.
Because he was mad about Owen Thomas outing him. So, Owen says, everybody knew. Everybody knew. And then it was, a sex tape? It was a Hulk Hogan sex tape, which just on the face of it doesn't sound very appealing.
No, exactly. Yeah, no, it was that. And it was like that it already, the existence of it had already been reported. But then Gawker got the tape and edited it into, like a 45-second, excerpt or
animated
whatever.
GIF.
And there were some other details, and so Yeah, there's actually a great Netflix documentary about that. Nobody Speaks, but
Oh, I'll have to watch it. So you were at Gawker at the time. I didn't know that.
I joined. I got my offer the day that they filed for bankruptcy.
Oh, nice.
So I got in right at the very end,
That's
which
good.
was which is a great time to join a company when you're like, well. I was like, well, this will be a good story
Okay.
one way or another.
Nowhere to go but up.
Yeah, exactly,
there you go.
exactly. I've been interviewing while the lawsuit was still happening, and I had friends who worked, there, and so I knew some stuff, because of that. But yeah, no, I came in like literally like at the very end.
Yeah.
But yeah. No, but these things usually don't succeed. Although what'll often happen is you'll have some sort of settlement where, because the person who's being sued might not have the money to pay for a lawyer.
I
and
doubt.
going
I
through
mean,
the process is very expensive.
I mean, Brian, who used to work at the Post, is an independent blogger. I doubt
Right.
he's got a ton of money to defend something like this.
Right. No, that's the thing. It's like if you don't have the sort of insurance or whatever,
Right.
things set up to do that. Like this is one of the reasons why I think that it's scary for a lot of journalists to go independent because they don't have indemnity, provided by anybody.
I just want
which
to
is-
tell everybody we do have a liability umbrella policy. So don't even think about suing us, okay? We do. Actually, we have to. Most media
Yeah, totally.
companies I have ever worked for have umbrella liability policies for things like this.
Precisely, exactly. But that's the thing is that, like for the Substacks of the world and whatnot, like, think people like that, I don't know how often people always think about that. And
Probably
Brian
it's not a good thing for me to say we have the insurance because that might encourage the lawsuit. So we don't have the insurance. We just dropped it just now. Forget it.
I think that was a
Well,
fraudulent
now you're on the
claim.
hook for
I'm gonna
fraud.
go
So
ahead.
now it's really damned if you do, damned if you
You
don't.
can't win. You can't win.
I have to say, I'm kind of this is one where I'm never okay with companies suing.
No,
media
and
outlets like this.
I'm a huge fan of Brian Krebs. I think the world
I am
of
too.
him.
I am too. I do have to say it is I don't think that it's anything. I don't think it's like defamation worthy, libel worthy
No.
of suing. But the I guess I would say that the accusation that he knew that the source of the leak was also an employee that he quoted, that does seem like if you're going to report on a story that someone was fired for internal stuff and that person was your source, I don't know, like there that does become kind of a weird ethical thing of like how do you disclose that or how do you
Unfortunately,
make that clear?
Brian may well have a very good defense for this, but we won't hear it because his lawyer said just clam up. Don't
Absolutely.
say because in general it's a good idea not to say anything. So Brian, as far as I'm concerned, the benefit of the doubt is on your side.
I agree.
yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
I mean, and it's such a sad move because Ubiquiti makes great stuff.
Yes,
and
I'm a Ubiquiti customer. I have Ubiquiti throughout my house. I love it.
yeah, they make great stuff, but this is just like it just comes across as such kind of an anti,
Yeah.
not a great move, right? Like it's one of those
Yeah.
things where people kind of you call things to question, especially since, look, the data breach was bad, but the fact that it was internal and whatnot does change the tenor of how it looks a
Right.
little bit, right? Like there can always be bad actors and whatnot, and you can do better things internally, but that is very different from a person
Being
going
hacked.
rogue on the inside.
Yeah.
Exactly. Then like, okay, we are a company where security is our competence and it was breached by an outsider, right? Like those are different scenarios. So I don't know,
Lashing out
it's a shame.
lashing out with a lawsuit against somebody who writes about security, a media company. Just it's not a good look, right? I mean,
Exactly.
have a conversation about it if you need to, but involving lawyers feels like
You put out a press release saying we are unhappy.
Sure, yeah.
This isn't right.
Yeah, or do what Wyze did and just be quiet. Don't say
Or just
anything.
don't say anything at all and hope nobody notices. Move along. Do a Jedi mind trick. Just go.
Or I don't know, just a thought. Like you employ or probably have communications professionals on retainer. Plant a story in another outlet where your people go through and give their side of the story and neutralize the situation. Like to me, that's what you should be doing. Like,
Right.
and if you wanted to be really dirty, you could kind of, start like on the down low, some conversations with people like, well, the story as it was reported wasn't really accurate. Okay, fine. But suing the security analyst, who reported this stuff, I'm not a fan of at all.
The comp stuff's a lot cheaper too, let me tell you, than the lawyers, I'm guessing.
Yeah, this is a bit of a Streisand effect too.
Exactly.
Yeah, we're talking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah, we're talking about the breach. Congratulations to Apple. Best Picture Oscar for CODA. Nobody was paying attention at the time, but that's just to let you know they did win. First ever Academy Award for Apple.
And for any streamer.
And for any streamer. Big deal,
Best
right?
Picture, yeah.
Now,
Yep.
I saw a number of people saying, Tim Cook, you show you're brilliant and all that. But honestly, all this really is something that premiered at Sundance. By the way, this is also the first time a Sundance premiere won an Oscar. And Apple saw it, and Apple engaged in a bidding war and won and bought it. I think not for a whole lot of money. I can't remember.
25 million, I think.
Yeah.
Which is not a lot, but for the size of the film, but it was significantly higher than what some of the other bids had been, because I think they'd already pre-sold some of the, I guess, distribution rights in some other territories. Anyway, sorry, go on.
The other thing that actually it redounds more to Apple's glory is that they then spent $10 million for an Oscar campaign.
Yeah.
And that's how you get the big names to come to your streamer, is saying, not only did we win an Academy Award, but we won it because we had a $10 million marketing campaign, which was more than the movie's entire production budget, to get this into the Oscars, into consideration, and ultimately to win. And I don't know how important those campaigns are, but I think Hollywood takes it seriously. And if you're a Martin Scorsese, you're looking at that, you're saying, maybe I won't go to Netflix where my movie will be buried with 300 other films. Maybe I will go to Apple and get that Oscar campaign. In fact, he does have a film coming to Apple pretty soon. So
Matthew Bilioni at Puck News wrote a really great thing about this. Actually, it was before it won Best Picture, but it had been expected to win because it won the other awards, the other big things, and just based on how the voting block is, it was
a tight race. I think there were.
It was tight. I think it was between it and Dune for sure.
Gosh, I thought Power of the Dog, which I didn't like all that much, but sure seemed like it had a lot of sentiment behind it, including 12 nominations.
Yes, and then it was other than director. I mean, it was shut out of a lot of stuff. But Baloney goes into this on Puck News, but he wrote a thing last week called "Tim Cook's Oscar Moment Didn't Come Cheap," and it goes into a lot of like what they had to go through in terms of having a good Oscar campaign, and that it is more difficult than just showing up with $10 million, because clearly Netflix and Amazon have tried that before and it hasn't worked. So it was a lot of, massaging and messaging and stuff to get what they were able to get.
I wonder about how much of it too is like there's a certain degree of sort of just subject matter and general sort of the world that we live in, right? I mean, it's a very depressing time for a lot of people, and it's been hard, and like something that has a more uplifting thing. I think that was one of the things with the Power of the Dog. A lot of people were like,
it's kind of grim.
It's like,
yeah,
exactly. And it's like maybe we need, and you can't. There's only so much you can do with money to buy that, right? Like having that at your disposal in terms of something that feels like, hey, it's a feel good movie, right? I think has a lot going for it in that way.
There's
too.
no question though that streaming, in fact, as we were talking about, kind of the end of the line for E3. After this Oscars, I think it might be the end of the line for traditional theatrical movies, and that streaming really is dominant. Netflix had 27 nominations. That's including the 12 for Power of the Dog and 4 for Don't Look Up. Apple had nominations also for Joel Coen's Macbeth, 3 of them. So there were a lot of streaming nominations. And I've seen actually a number of articles, and there have been a number of directors, including Ridley Scott and Scorsese himself, who say, the idea of a small film or an art film or even just a thoughtful film doing well in the theaters is pretty much gone. It's going to be comic book movies, extravaganzas. It's going to be Dunes going forward, and that with the streamers. And this is what you were talking about earlier, Dan, with the idea of writing a series as a novelist. having more than one book to develop a story and characters. I think it's kind of the same for streamers. It's not just movies, but 6 episodes of something like The Dropout can be so much more compelling than a 2-hour movie.
Yeah, I mean, it gets people bought in. They come back, right? It's kind of the equivalent of like recurring revenue in some ways because people don't. I mean, look at Disney Plus. Disney Plus is a great example of this. They've carefully set up their schedule so that like there's never a time that you don't want to be watching Disney Plus or subscribe to Disney Plus. And I think a lot of the other streamers are following the same tack where it's like, let's have this sort of constant rollout of things so that we can keep bringing people back. And that helps, right? Netflix, I think in some ways has struggled more with the film aspect, right? Because they've dropped a ton of films, but to your point earlier about Scorsese and like the finding the signal to noise ratio there, where it's like, well, there's a movie coming out or 10 movies coming out on this one day, and it's like, do I really want to invest my time in that, or do I want to do something where I can sort of watch over a long term and get comfortable with it? Because I don't know, for myself, much easier for me to like reach for a remote and start watching a new episode of something that I'm already invested in than to commit a new 2 hours to like a movie.
I didn't even think about that.
Psychology thing there.
Yeah, thinking about my own use. Absolutely. Yeah.
One thing of the calculus that you should also factor in with Apple specifically is that it's not just money, but it's influence. And they have spent a lot of time bringing in some Hollywood insiders into the fold to make sure you don't just have their expertise, but you have their network. And that network effect is also extremely powerful.
It's currently run by 2 insiders from Sony. And I think that when they brought the Sony guys in, that's really when Apple TV started to take off.
100%. And the Puck News thing that I posted, and I posted it both in the IRC and in the Discord, goes into some of those details. But I think you're exactly right. Like their first attempt at content was not good, and then they found the Sony execs who were had like a good TV sensibility, and now film acquisition stuff. And this, to Wesley's point, like they have influence, and so people don't have the same kind of, in Hollywood especially, they don't have the same maybe reservations and feelings of negativity towards Apple that they might towards Netflix and Amazon, which helps when it comes time to trying to lure people in to make exclusive projects for you.
Yeah. I didn't see Tim Cook at the Oscars. Matthew said he was going to be there, and I was looking for him.
I believe he was. Yeah.
Oh,
I'm pretty sure he was
there.
He
was in the cheap seats.
Yeah. Because at this point, they had to have like the social distancing spaces and whatnot, so it was kind of like the Golden Globes in terms of setup. So yeah, the execs and whatnot were definitely
they were in
not,
the back. It's funny.
Seat filler.
He got no airtime if he was there. It's funny. All the movie stars. That just shows you, as much as Silicon Valley wants to be Hollywood, and as much as they make, and they really are probably more of an economic driving force than Hollywood, and more of an influence culturally, they have the nosebleeds. They're still in the back of the auditorium when it comes to glamour events.
It's an interesting point about the Netflix thing too. Somebody mentioned this. It might have been Julia Alexander on Twitter talking about this, like that Netflix and the studios have almost a very adversarial relationship, right? Because Netflix's whole point was like, we're kind of trying to supplant the existing model, whereas all the people, to your point, Christina, about Apple like having a little more goodwill, like people in Hollywood use Apple products. They like Apple products. That gives a sort of a positive spin on it, and that's not Apple's only business, right? They're not there just to put Hollywood out of business. They're there to sell phones. That's just a sideline for them. So
and they're buying things from existing studios, right? Like it's not like they're trying to do everything in house, which is what Netflix shifted to doing. So they're still buying other things too. But exactly, it doesn't have that same adversarial relationship. You're exactly right.
Interesting. Really interesting. Yeah, I actually ended up paying for Puck News, partly because our friend Baratunde's there, but also it's a really good journal for covering kind of the confluence of Silicon Valley politics and Hollywood. So,
I love it. I'm a big fan of that, and also the Ankler. It's interesting because the trades have, almost all of the Hollywood trades are now owned by Penske Media Group. All of them are really Deadline, Hollywood Reporter, Variety, and now we're seeing the next generation kind of disrupt things the same way Deadline did, 20 years ago, which with the Ankler and Puck News. So.
And by the way, if you say Penske, that's a familiar name. Yes, it's Roger Penske's son, who took the billions he made in auto racing and automotive, and invested it in Hollywood media. He owns Variety. He owns Hollywood Reporter. He owns Deadline. He owns it all.
Mm-hmm.
Along comes
Rolling Stone.
Rolling Stone. That's right. What a fascinating.
South by Southwest.
South by. He saved South by when they were about to go out of business because of COVID. He stepped in, and he's a majority owner now of the Penskes. Isn't that funny? Let's take a little break. More to come. What a panel. Love it. Wesley Faulkner is here. I almost called you Wesley Falk. That's the short version. Wesley Faulkner is here, head of community at Single Store. Tell us about...
Don't call me late for dinner.
Well, you are going to be late for dinner today because we're going to keep you late. Sorry. Tell me about Single Store. Are you still loving it there?
Single Store is a database company that does both ingest and analytics and using the same storage in the same server, so you don't have to move it over to another instance of some other specialized database in order to do those same functions. So because it's the data stays in place without that transfer penalty or cost, it does these actions really, really quick. So if you are doing a high amount of ingest and a high amount of analytics on your workload, this is a good way to make sure that you can eke out every bit of performance.
Nice.
And speaking of South by Southwest,
yes,
I did run into Baratunde there, so it was good to see him. So bringing this full circle.
I miss Barrett. He's too big time for us ever to get him on the show.
He's such a great guy.
But I love
He's so busy.
I
does
know,
everything.
He's busy. We try to get him on wherever he can. He's a great guy. Also with us, Christina Warren, now at GitHub. Isn't that... We've got 2 developer advocates on the show today. Isn't that great? And then there's the single guy, just teasing. Dan Morin's not single.
Get me in trouble with my wife.
He's not
is
single.
What you're do.
He's not. No, no. In fact, we know you bought your wife a PS5. That is a good man. That is a good man.
Yeah, she's currently playing Assassin's Creed Valhalla downstairs, probably.
That's pretty good, actually. I like Assassin's Creed Valhalla. That's pretty fun.
Are you sure she's not hacking some government entity or some?
You know what? I can't say. I haven't seen her in a couple hours.
As far as he knows, she's really good at computers, though. We do know. We do know that. Don't forget, Dan's newest book is coming out in just a couple of months. That means it's all done. You finished it. You got the galleys. You done the galley proofs. It's ready to go, right?
Did the whole thing. Did a lot. I read it so much that even I started to get tired of it. But I think that's me. I've read it like 8 times, right? I think people reading it the first time are going to be blown away. So that's what I'll say about it.
And I never wrote fiction, but that is the hardest thing about writing a book is the galley proofs, and you got to read the thing again and again and again. Yeah. It's like, oh please. The Nova Incident, Book 3 of the Galactic Cold War, comes out in June. You can pre-order now at Amazon. Get in line. Oh, sorry, July 26th.
July 26th. Yeah, thank God the date's up there. Otherwise, I wouldn't remember.
Yeah, July 26th. Ooh, exciting. Our show today brought to you by Nareva. You know what's exciting? People are coming back to work. I missed you guys. It's really nice. We have the lunches and things. But at the same time, there's still people at home because they've got small kids or they just aren't comfortable coming in. So a lot of us now, a lot of businesses, we're doing the hybrid thing. And that means your conference room becomes one of the most important places in the business. And conference room audio becomes super important. If you're still talking to that little spider in the middle of the table, you're leaving out all those people working from home. They can't hear you. Worse, I see big companies do this. They bring in AV companies. The engineers crawl around. They install speakers, microphones, wires everywhere. It's expensive. There's lots of calibration involved. And you really never get off the wagon train because they're going to have to come back and calibrate it again and again and upgrade and so forth. I have a much better solution. It's called Nareva, and they've got a patented technology that is amazing. Essentially, it's as easy as installing a sound bar with 1 or 2 of these Nareva speaker bars. You're not only going to have great sound, you're going to fill the room with thousands of virtual microphones. It's their patented microphone mist technology, which means everyone in the room can be heard clearly no matter where they are, no matter where they're facing. So if people want to get up and move around, if they want to make sure there's good social distance, it doesn't matter. It auto-calibrates every single time. Meetings and class participants can completely relax, completely be natural, but remote participants don't feel left out because they can hear everything that's going on. And thanks to continuous auto-calibration, your rooms are always instantly ready with optimized audio, no outside technician required. Your IT department will love it if you have multiple conference rooms or huddle rooms because they get a console that lets them monitor, manage, and adjust the system sitting at their desk. They don't have to go from room to room. They don't have to get up at all. And the installation is so easy. Go to the Nareva website, nareva.com, N-U-R-E-V-A, nareva.com. If you can install a soundbar, you can install it yourself. No big expensive installation. Just put it right up on the wall and it just works. You're going to love it. There it is. There's the animated GIF of installing it. Could not be easier. Learn more about Nareva. It's the great, perfect solution. Not as expensive as those custom AV installs and not as crappy sounding as those little spiders in the middle of the table. Nareva. Ask yourself, before you just do the obvious, costly, complicated traditional system, make the leap to simple, economical Nareva. NUREVA.com. We thank them so much for their support of This Week in Tech. Nareva.com. A great product. It is nice to be going back. Now, you've always been, Wesley, you've always been remote, right? You don't have to go into an office, or do you?
Oh, that's right. I mean, there are team offsites, there are meetings, and I will go on site there. But yeah, I've virtually been remote for the past, 4 or 5 years.
It's not even COVID. It's just how a lot of people work.
Yeah. I mean,
you like it that way? You prefer it?
Well, I mean, it gave me the flexibility to move to Wisconsin. So yeah, actually, it's been
you could be
really
with family.
Good. And I have a nice lighting, some nice mic, a nice camera, so it's almost as if I am there. But the companies, especially in the tech space, especially during the hiring crunch, it makes it so much better to hire remote because not having an office or requiring someone to be next to a hub or pay for relocation makes hiring so much easier and allows you to tap into the work potential of so many more employees. And for me, the flexibility of being at home or being close to my family is a good perk that would be the differentiator between me working from one company to another with the same pay.
Yeah. I mean, I think one of the funny things is so many employees who had never worked from home during COVID and now say, this is it. I am never going back. I like it. And as long as, I mean, I think it's, for a lot of jobs, it's completely effective. Christina, are you going back into an office now, or are you?
Well, so I left Microsoft right as Microsoft was starting to open back up, and it was going to be a hybrid work thing where, I was going to say, okay, I'll come in a couple of days a week and work from home the rest. GitHub does have an office in the Seattle area in Bellevue. I haven't been to it yet, but I will. It's still not at like full capacity or anything, but I think it'll be one of those things where I probably I mostly work from home, but I am actually looking forward to going in.
It's in San Francisco, right? Down here?
Well, the main office is in San Francisco, but they do have a location in Seattle or in Bellevue. They have a one that apparently it's beautiful. So I look forward to going into that. I would ideally like to maybe go a couple of times a week. We'll see. I'm not sure yet. I'm actually hoping that I can come and visit the San Francisco office.
If you do, we're up here not far away.
That's actually exactly what I was going to say. I was like, if I do that, I would love to come see you for sure.
Yeah, so GitHub, I mean, if anybody is remote work focused, it's got to be GitHub. Mm-hmm. Here's an article from 2015 that says, at GitHub, you don't need no stinking office. That says that half of GitHub's employees actually are off-site. But there's, I think, the office that you would be going to in, I don't know, maybe that's San Francisco. But it's
I think that's the San Francisco office.
It's pretty. It's very nice.
But yeah,
it's like picnic tables.
Totally. No, I mean, it totally has that kind of vibe. Well, and you miss that sort of thing, right? I mean, that's the thing. It's like, if I had a big house in Wisconsin, then it would be maybe different. But I have like my office, which is a mess right now, and that I have to kind of get cleaned up. And It's
So
nice
this
to
is
be able to get
when
out.
you do come to San Francisco, I want you to check this out. Apparently, they have a replica of the Oval Office.
Okay, that's amazing.
I don't know whose office it is. It doesn't look like it's anybody's. Maybe you could sit there. We'll take some pictures. It'll be great. In fact,
Absolutely.
if you could do the show from the Oval Office, that would be even better.
Right? Wouldn't that be great?
Wouldn't that be awesome?
That'd be so good. That'd be really good.
Yeah, it makes sense that they would be remote. Yeah. And Dan, have you ever worked in an office with people?
Yeah, it's been a long time. I mean, when I was at Macworld, I worked remotely, but I would go into the office a few times a year, especially around Apple events and stuff like that. But the last time I had a job that was me full-time in an office was, I think, 2005.
Yeah.
So
It's
been a while.
what's really ironic is I never stopped coming in, but I was the only, it was me and John, and that was pretty much it for the last 2 years in COVID. But because it's hard for me to do especially the radio show, but even Twit, to do that at home. I just can't get my energy level up. I need to go to a studio to do stuff. I need bright lights in my eyes before I can even wake up. So I never stopped, but I also really like it that nobody else was here. So don't come back, okay? We've had group lunches now. It's been I did kind of miss people. It's kind of fun to have people come back. But I love it that people can do work from home, and I think that's absolutely going to be the way to go. Speaking of Macworld, you have an article, Dan, in Macworld this week. Apple is at its best when it doesn't know best. And you're using the Mac Studio and Studio Display as an example of what you mean.
Yeah, I mean, I think, and I sort of jokingly, my lead on this one was like the inside of Apple are two wolves, right? And there is this tension there that Apple has always had, which is to say, like their sort of company line is the whole, we like to surprise and delight our users, and that is when they do such good work, is when they come up with answers to problems you didn't even know you had, and you're like, oh, well, that's great, that makes my life so much easier. But the sort of flip side of that, the other element that they deal with is this whole, like, we have one way, it's our way of the highway, right? Like, we know how we're going to do this. You're going to do it this way, or you're not going to do it at all. And I think those are kind of two sides of the same coin.
Do you think with Johnny Ive's departure and Steve Jobs dying 10 years ago, that's changed a little bit, that they're a little more... Johnny Ive felt like he was the dogmatic keeper of the flame.
There is definitely a top-down feel there, and it's not that they don't still have people doing that, but I think there is this shift where they've started to go back to listening more to their users. I mean, I think you can see that with the MacBook Pros from last year, where they reinstated all the ports, right? That, like, were missing.
Yes.
Yeah, people are happy.
Got rid of the touch bar, got rid of the butterfly keyboard.
The bad keyboard. Yeah, all this stuff feels like, rather than them sort of imposing we know how we want to do this, and it's going to be great. You're going to love it. Trust us.
Big escape key, listening to developers.
I mean, but like the studio is a great example of like putting ports on the front, right?
Yeah.
An Apple machine that it's not, let's be honest, it's not the best looking Mac that's ever been made, right? It's not that it's totally unattractive, but it's functional, right?
At
It's
first,
functional.
I
It's not
thought
form over function.
It looked really tubby. And I've kind of it's cute. It's like a little chubby teddy bear. It's chubby, but it's cute chubby.
I mean, if you throw it out there and compare it to something like the trash can Mac Pro, right? Which was all about form. It was all about, we're going to make this beautiful circular
piece of crap.
Right. And in the end of the day, it didn't do the job it needed to get done. So I think it's refreshing to have a situation where they're like, we understand this is a machine that you want to get your work done, and we're going to make it as easy as possible and accommodate what you're trying to do with it. And I think that's good. It speaks well to where they're going with these product lines.
And yet, the Studio Display, I'm really starting to think, was a misfire.
I don't know. There's a lot of debate about it, and I can't tell how much of that is sort of created versus how much of it is actually impacting people, because people wanted, like, after the Pro Display XDR came out with its humongous price tag, people were like, oh, just put the 27-inch iMac panel in a monitor and let me buy it. And that's what they did, and it's, it's $1,600. It's not cheap, but for an Apple product, it's pretty cheap, I don't think it's a bad quality monitor. I think a lot of people who are used to having an iMac on their desk would be very happy with this. There's been a lot of complaints about this and that and how it matches up to other things. But I think one of the things is there's not really a super comparable product to this, right? Everybody who was using a Mac Mini or wanted to hook up an external display to their MacBook Pro, a lot of them were using the LG, the Ultrafines.
And those had
a lot of people had complaints about those too.
They were poorly shielded at first, and they're
poorly shielded.
Yeah.
The built-in stand isn't great, although it at least comes with
Flimsy-ish.
Mesa. So because I have one of those that I'm going to be selling, and I should be getting.
You're getting the studio display?
I am. I got the one with the VESA option because I'm not dumb.
Put your fingers in your ears. I think it's basically a bunch of parts from 2018 and 2019 Apple had left over.
Oh yeah, you're not wrong.
Slapped together into a $1,500 product.
Oh, it's look, I have many complaints that I spent the money that I spent on it. Like, I'm not happy to buy it, to be very clear.
Oh, okay.
But there are no other 5K displays, and that actually does matter to me.
Does 5K make that much of a difference? There's lots of 4K.
Yeah, for me, I really do. I have to say, because like for PC stuff, for gaming, whatnot, 4K is fine. I can use like a TV as a monitor for that. But I've been using a 5K iMac for like 10 years at this point, and
it's hard to go back.
And it's hard to go back. So the reason I ultimately ended up getting the LG was because I was like, I just wasn't happy with any other display that I got. Like having them side by side, it really bothered me. And even hooking my Mac up to it, I just didn't like the way that the display scaling happened. So I think it's stupid that I spent this much money on something that doesn't have local dimming zones. But that honestly, would OLED have been nice? Yes. But did I expect it? No. Higher refresh rate, I don't think was ever going to happen. Anyway, that matters to me less. But I feel like
that's another thing that bugs the hell out of me. Apple put an HDMI 2.0 port on its studio display, so it can't do high frame rate. I would love 120. I have 120 hertz monitors that I can't, get that speed on.
Right.
It drives me nuts.
You can if you, depending on like if you have a DisplayPort.
I'm going to use DisplayPort, although I've had trouble getting
USB-C.
DisplayPort working, which is another issue. This is, by the way, Samsung said, "Oh, hold my beer," and they announced the M8, which is it's only 4K, but doesn't that look a little familiar? Like maybe kind of like an iMac.
Yeah, with
stand,
the colors.
With the colors.
Whoa.
And
Samsung making a product that looks like an Apple product.
Yeah,
that's
unheard of. Although they didn't put the camera in the display, they put it on top of it. Of course, that way you could put a better camera in there.
Or you can take it off, which, I know people who can't have cameras.
Yeah, don't want a camera.
Take
it off.
Totally.
Yeah, sure.
And it's $700. So it's less than half as expensive.
But I think there's something to Christina's point about, for whatever reason, I think, especially if you get used to something like the 5K display on the iMac, I think the resolution issue hits people harder than a lot of those other bullet point features.
So you'd rather have
HDR.
5K than HDR?
As someone who has used an iMac 5K for 5 years, I don't know what I'm missing. Maybe is probably part of it. Like if I saw that and we're like, oh yeah, that would be nice to have on there. But it's hard to have a sort of apples to apples comparison, pardon the expression, because there isn't another monitor that chooses to emphasize the things that Apple is choosing to emphasize in its displays.
By the way, I think this is hysterical. In the product photographs for the Samsung M8, they show Apple TV playing on the M8, just in case you didn't really get the connection right away. I'm an Apple fanboy, and look, I bought 4 studios for various people. I did have a studio display on order, which I canceled, but I'm starting to feel like Apple's really just selling us an iPhone with a big fan.
Can I spitball something?
Yes, please.
This has been debunked, I think, but I'm going to just put it out there. Do you remember in 2014, I think, there were rumors that Apple was going to come out with a television?
Yes.
Right.
Yes. This is the closest they've come. It's an iPhone in a TV.
Mm-hmm. It's talking about like old chips, the HDMI.
Somewhere, Gene Munster is very happy, I'm sure.
Exactly. I was going to say Gene Munster is very happy with this, and
I don't think he ever gave up, by the way.
No, why not? Just keep doubling down on that one.
No, it's coming. Still, it's coming. I know it is.
It's going to come.
Well, that's the weird thing with this is the teardown. I mean, we're not really sure how the storage is connected.
It's 64 gigs of storage. It only uses 2.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so it's like, okay, you could, and I'm not sure like what the, they would need to have some sort of UI on it because of course there's no input selection, but it's like, wouldn't it be great if they just made this? Either. Well, there's not, but you could use network
run
from,
it through, you would have to run it through the
Thunderbolt.
Yeah, Thunderbolt's a network. Yeah, there's
exactly.
no.
So, I mean, to me, what would be great is if you were able to have this and use the network of its host device or whatever.
They're never going to do that. You think
I know
they're
they
going
won't
to do that? They're never.
Absolutely not. Of course not. I'm just saying it would be nice if I could like have an Apple TV built into my $1,600 monitor.
Yeah.
That's all I'm saying.
Sure.
It'd be nice.
Would be. And in fact, it's a better processor than the Apple 4K Ultra. But the 4K Apple TV. But... No, it's just because they had some chips left over.
The chips are
they had some chips left over.
They make them at scale.
They're like, we have a bunch of iPads laying around. We're gonna grab the camera out of that. Okay, this is a chip. Fine. This is the only storage that it'll work with, so we'll just throw these in, and this will also give us maybe. I mean, this is just me extrapolating. This will give us a test run for the bigger iMac that we said that we're not doing, but we are absolutely going to come out with at some point.
So initially the rumor was, this is what we're doing instead of an iMac. It's an iMac deconstructed. We're going to sell it separately. And then now there's rumors, no, they're going to do a 32-inch iMac. That's still on the drawing board.
I think they have to.
You think they do?
I think there is a gap there. I mean, and I wrote about this a little bit too, but there's a performance gap too because I was in the market to replace this 27-inch iMac because it's still an Intel model, and I can't get anything that's between the Studio, which starts at $2,000,
exactly,
and an M1, and it's like I already have an M1 Air. I don't want to take a lateral move of like having this is my workhorse machine. I do podcast editing on this. I do stuff that actually requires some horsepower. I do things that require more than like 2 Thunderbolt ports, and so I wanted to buy something. I was like, there's really nothing in that price range between roughly, the iMac and the Mac Studio, and it feels like there should be something there because the M1 Pro chip, which they've used in the MacBook Pro, doesn't exist on the desktop. There is no configuration of a desktop machine that uses that one chip that's between the M1 and the M1 Max. And you're like, that's weird, right? You have a chip. It can do this stuff. You could stick it in an iMac or in a Mac Mini.
But remember, to be fair, single-core performance is identical on all M1 devices, from the Ultra down to the M1 MacBook Air. It's the same.
True enough.
It's not, the chip isn't that different. You get some more GPU cores. You get
more RAM too.
You get more RAM,
which is very important.
Yeah,
which is the big thing.
Yeah, but that's because Apple's decided to put the RAM on the SoC. I think Apple made some mistakes, honestly. And I've been a big proponent of the M1, and now people are going, "See, I told you, Leo." But I honestly feel like they really bought into this whole, like you look at the Studio motherboard, eventually it's going to be just a chip, right? Mm-hmm. The fact that they had to have any legacy nodes on there at all probably bothers the hell out of them. Johnny Cerrugi used to say, one chip, it should be one chip. And they're just going to eventually just make one giant chip.
The whole thing will be a chip. Yeah.
Talk about no upgradability. You'll have zero. It is what it is.
It's their dream.
Yeah.
It's Apple's dream, honestly, right? I mean, which is, I have to say, that becomes what'll be interesting about the Mac Pro, update is okay. Yeah. If they went all in on the redesign that they started, 5 years after the failure of the trash can, and finally in 2017, they finally were like, okay, well, now we'll do a listening tour. And we'll start on this earnestly in 2018, and then they come out with it, a year and a half later. They finally were like, look, we brought back upgradability, and you can add stuff and make changes and touch your own RAM. Oh my God, for them, if they can't get rid of that, is how it feels. But I don't know how they're going to handle that, given the design clearly of all of this being, connected.
Their GPUs are turning out to be woefully inadequate compared to NVIDIA and Radeon. Let's not forget that they call it M1, but it's an A14. It's the same chip as in your iPhone 12. It is an A14 with a bunch of different extra little side things. I'm not convinced. I'm wondering, honestly, if they might be running out of runway. That the problem with the Mac Pro is we're having trouble getting it be a lot faster. And all of the speed comparisons, they compare power to power, which is important on a laptop and a phone, much less important on a desktop. And if you want real power, you're going to turn your NVIDIA 3090 Ti up to 400 watts. You're gonna have an airplane taken off on your desk, but you're going to get the job done twice as fast. And I think on a desktop, power is not as much of a consideration. And Apple's big selling point is kind of built in because they're basically using an iPhone.
Or is the iPhone basically using a desktop chip? I mean, it depends how you look at it, doesn't it?
No, because the iPhone came first. It's an A14. It's not even as fast as the iPhone 13 chip. The M2 is the A15. Anyway, I know I'm swimming upstream on this. In fact, Neil Seibart had a big article yesterday in Above Avalon or a couple of days ago. Apple is in a league of its own. And it is true. If you look at numbers, wow. New iPhone users, 60 million a year. Apple Watch new users, 30 million a year. iPad new users, 30 million a year. Mac users, new users, 15 million a year. And he says it's all because they changed their strategy, where it used to be what he called a pull strategy, where Apple would take a product and be aggressive with that product, the products that were going to sell the best, or he says capable of making technology more relevant and personal, and then have that pull all the other product lines along. So here your AirPods, watch, phones, then iPads, then laptops and desktops, pulling them through, which meant that the stuff on the right-hand side, the iMac, the laptops, and even the iPads are kind of lagging. He says now they have a new strategy, the push strategy, in which every major product category is told, go for it. Just go for it. I'm not sure I agree with Neil because I have to point out they're all using the same chips, which really has a lot to do with the overall speed capable. You follow him, Dan. You follow him closely. What do you think of Neil? I think Neil's analysis is always very good. What do you think of this?
No. I mean, I think it makes a certain degree of sense in terms of, despite the fact that the hardware and the chips are consistent across the line, I think Apple's often tried to differentiate it by use cases, right? I mean, the devices they're pushing are not like, hey, let's try to like sell somebody this product when they could be using any other product, right? Like, try to get everybody into an iPad, right? Instead of an iPhone or a Mac or something like that. And rather having an opportunity not only to be able to say, let's pitch the device that works best for whatever you're trying to do, but also, to be fair, try to sell you on multiple devices, right? If they can sell you an iPhone and a Mac and an iPad, then that's great business for them. That helps them jump up all those users, and it helps them broaden their user base and, deepen their product lines as well. So, I mean, I think he's not wrong that it's having all of those product lines sort of push individually as opposed to sort of prioritizing the ones that are the hot sellers. I think it probably helps them just end up with a deeper bench.
Well, and it is true, and Mark Gurman predicted this, that they announced this year they're going to announce a ton of new products, and they're going to announce everything all at once, and it is going to be kind of an overwhelming avalanche of stuff. On the other side of the aisle, I'm really happy to see Ars Technica, Andrew Cunningham, had benchmarked some of the new Alder Lake chips, the i3 12100 and the i5 12400, and Intel is starting to speed up, become a little bit better. They're finally doing something Apple pioneered, which is these, actually maybe Qualcomm did or ARM did, but these efficiency cores and power cores combined. And I've always made fun of the i3s, but actually the i3s are starting to benchmark fairly well. The i5 is really starting to benchmark pretty well. And being very competitive. And one of the things that was interesting in this article, by the way, is among all these benchmarks, he started to include some M1 chips. And Apple honestly didn't look all that good compared to some of these Intel chips, these Alder Lake chips. And, some people have called it Scalder Lake because these chips are not exactly skimpy on power consumption. Look at this. This is handbrake energy use for 1080p encode. Apple easily beats everybody else with 24.95 kilojoules compared to, say, the Max, which was an i3, 127, almost 128 kilojoules. But if you give them more power, they perform pretty well in the MP4 encode. The i3 was as fast as the M1. The i3. And an i7, 12700, was better than twice as fast. That really puts these Apple graphs into perspective. Yeah, if you only look at power consumption, Apple's amazing. But if you just want to get work done, maybe an i3 is as fast as an M1? That's scary numbers.
I think last time I was on the show, we talked about this specifically, and I said that this lead is great. It's temporary.
You were right.
The reason why I said this specifically related to AMD is I think they just acquired Xilinx, where some of this acceleration is done by some specialty accelerators that are on the chip. And so they moved the memory, of course, closer for the M1 and the M1 family. But there's also an accelerator for JavaScript, I think, also on the M1 chip, which is really great.
Yeah, and they have playback units for ProRes video, so you get much better performance for 8K and 4K video.
And when you see this emphasis on accelerators for specialty applications, that is something that you can absolutely do on other processors just to make sure that things run quicker. And I see that happening in the somewhat near future where, Apple will still be competitive. They will each best each other in different categories. But I can say it's not a panacea. So this is, yes, M1 is great. There are also some other consequences when you move over to your own type of architecture. We mentioned earlier about breaches and security concerns. When you're now going to be or moving into the majority of some of the install bases of some of these Apple products, this is also a vector for
you get a meltdown or Spectre happening in the M1, you got a problem. Yeah, that's an interesting point. Right now, that problem's on x86, not on Apple Silicon, but who knows?
It's probably there. It just probably hasn't found.
Nothing's perfect. Apple does have a slight advantage because they make the operating system. They control the whole stack. So Intel or AMD, if they do add additional, capabilities, they still are making a general purpose off-the-shelf chip for a variety of situations. So they can't be quite, as tightly integrated as
Look at the Xbox. Look at even the PlayStation. Look at AMD is running those.
That's true.
And they make specialty processors already.
Yep. Theoretically, low
do.
end, but they're great. Yeah.
Yeah, no, they definitely do, but it's a different sort of thing where if you're, looking
well, it's because they know what the
like,
application's going to be, right? They know exactly.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Like I imagine that there will be. I mean, we've already seen this. Like Amazon is doing their own, ARM 64 chips in the server room, and NVIDIA is getting into that space, the data center space too. And so I think we'll see a lot of these more specialty use chips, similar to kind of how the M1 has been developed. On the ARM architecture, going after different things, but the x86 is this great kind of general purpose thing that can be used in a variety of different ways. And Apple, even though they're selling way more than a lot of other individual companies, is still just a small fraction of the number of computing devices sold. So they don't have to have the same amount of yield that Intel does or even AMD does in terms of how well. I'm not sure. I'd be curious to know who ships more chips, AMD or Apple. But certainly, Intel ships more chips, so because they have to be used in so many different things that Apple just doesn't have to care about.
Fundamentally different business models too, right? Their job is to sell chips, right? Intel and AMD, that's their business. Apple is about selling devices. They're making the chips to sell those.
I would even argue Apple's selling lifestyles more than anything, right?
You could argue that's always been the case.
Right.
And people,
Absolutely.
people have been quick to point that out, but it's something that people are buying, right? If they are selling it, it's working.
It works.
Let me just ask this question. So if we're talking about volume for Microsoft and the Xbox, what if a company like HP or Dell saying we would like our own processor, please? And what kind of volume difference do you think they could push? I think it'd be at least competitive with the Xbox, and so they could be it could be differentiated to the point where Dell has their own processor to differentiate themselves from HP. HP has their own processor. I think they can push enough units to make it.
That's really interesting.
You could. I think the challenge there, you could definitely do that. I think the challenge there is then always around on the software side, right? Like what differences are you going to make and what sort of performant things are you going to do to make sure that the software that is running is going to run well? Like Apple has the advantage there and Xbox too to a certain degree in that like they're controlling the full thing. So they're, determining what software can be written and, with the processes there, same thing with, like the custom chips inside of an Xbox. Whereas I feel like unless it's at a very specific thing, like does a Dell or an HP, do they have the resources to dedicate towards having their own software stack to run on these dedicated machines?
And the marketing side of it as well. If you're HP or Dell, you've made your business with, we sell computers to everybody for every possible purpose. What is, I think a lot of people would be hard pressed to say like HP as a brand is like, well, I'll buy, specialty stuff to make my Excel functions run better in my office environment. I don't think they have as strong a brand to enable them to specify that deeply in what they're doing. They're not a company even like, you throw out something like Alienware or something like that, right? Which is, again, has a very clear market sort of niche they're going for.
Right.
It's harder for Dell, which is, if anything, their corporate identity is sort of, we're cheap, right? Like we're affordable
Right, well,
laptops.
it's kind of a commodity type thing. People can customize it their own thing. Yeah, I think what they'd have to do is like an HP used to do, Itanium, like their own kind of custom processors, and they had their own like, variations of Unix and whatnot and all that stuff. But like, I think that if they were to go that direction, it would be basically what Sun was, right? Before Sun.
Yeah, it didn't go so well for
away.
PA risk, and it didn't go so well for Sun. And
I was going to say that's the problem, right? Is that Apple, you would need them in those specialized cases, and Apple has found that sweet spot.
Yeah.
Qualcomm could probably do it, to be honest, right? Like Qualcomm could and has to a certain degree.
Yeah, you could argue every Android phone in the U.S. is designed around Qualcomm chips.
Right.
So, yeah. I don't know. I think Apple does have a unique market position, though. And selling the lifestyle is not a bad way to go. You said in our Discord chat, Christina, that it's silent when it's running. And, I have it sitting next. That's I have the Mac Studio. My wife has the Ultra. When I maxed all 20 cores on it. The fan did not ramp up. It didn't get hot. It was absolutely silent. On the other side, I have an AMD Ryzen 5900 and a 3080 NVIDIA GPU, and the fans sound like a jet airplane's taking off.
Right.
It's faster, but is it the lifestyle I want?
Right. It's the trade-off, right? And I think it depends on what you're doing. I think that for really high purpose, high performance computing applications and stuff, this is the interesting thing for me is I feel like the value prop for the Mac Pro, they're at an interesting inflection point. Like I'll be interested in seeing what they're going to do on the GPU side, like what their answer to that is going to be, because there were people who were buying the Intel Mac Pros who probably didn't need it all, but maybe needed just enough, and for their various workloads and stuff, they're like, okay, even though it's going to be really loud and even though it's going to be hot, like we need these Xeons, we need this RAM, we need this upgradability.
We need
stuff,
NVIDIA or
right?
AMD video cards,
or AMD, right?
Yeah.
Exactly. And at this point, I would say anybody who's buying a Mac Pro, and it's not adding it to something additional. Like I would say probably in 99 out of 100 cases, maybe 999 out of 1,000 cases, would be better off buying more commodity hardware and running Linux in some way.
I agree.
Like if that's the situation that they need.
If
a
you
Mac
need
Pro
speed, much better. That's why Apple's
Right.
got a real challenge with the Mac Pro at the end of this year.
I agree. I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
Because I feel like the Ultra is going to fit that like 80% point, but like, how are you going to go after that
How do you get
audience?
any better than that? Yeah.
Well,
Right.
and the question too is audience as well, because I mean, the Mac
Yes.
Pro has historically been one of the smallest sellers in their lineup.
Exactly.
Because
It's
just
a tiny audience.
Right, because their appeal is consumers. So, and a lot of those people are going to be perfectly happy with a MacBook Air or an iMac or what have you. So they're really trying to hit that 1% or whatever of their market that really needs that.
It's important to them,
It is
right?
important.
Because they're
Yes.
influencers. They need to get those
absolutely.
people. And that's
I think,
part of their
as
image.
Christina says, it's a really interesting question. They've teased that the Mac Pro is coming, so they know that's a challenge they have to deal with. But how are they going to address it?
It's not going to be as simple as just stacking another couple of processors.
No.
I really don't think that's going to solve the issue because you don't have the
But it's-
GPU.
And it's hard to imagine also at the same time that now that they've deployed an architecture that's basically the same throughout the rest of their product lines, we're going to have one product that has swappable DIMMs and PCI slots. Like,
Right.
the
Yeah.
scale on that isn't going to work,
market.
right?
I think
Yeah.
honestly, they should write off that market. It's such a small market. They've, I don't think it's important. And
I think it's a tough proposition for
They're
them.
going to lose
Yeah.
them because honestly, they don't compete. They're not competitive.
Right, because at this point they're not. If you're spending $10,000 plus, on a machine, if you're going to that thing, then at this point the software advantage that you have with Apple, I don't know where that is, because most people who are doing that levels of compute who need the GPU, frankly, are doing machine learning stuff. They're using CUDA, which is NVIDIA. They're not using AMD anyway,
Right.
or they're using customized, very
They're
specifically
going to use
written
Linux
like software.
They're going to buy commodity boxes and use Linux.
Absolutely.
It's kind of interesting because sometimes I think maybe performance isn't the only criterion for some users. I mean, look what they do for scientific computing. They're all using Python. I mean, come on, really? that's not the fastest. Well, anyway, there are all sorts of considerations, and that's why being a lifestyle company is interesting. And that isn't the same thing as being a pro product. That's a very, very different thing. I don't think they need that pro market, to be honest. We'll have a lot to talk about in a few months, maybe in June at WWDC. Mm-hmm. Let's take a little break. Our show today brought to you by Wealthfront. Now, we were talking earlier about, getting into venture capital and stuff, but for, I would say, everybody, job one is being sensible, not playing the stonks market, not diamond hands, not to the moon, but putting away money to build your wealth step by step. Trust me, retirement comes faster than you think. It's just around the corner. The kids will be going to college just around the corner. You want to get that house. Stock trading, I think, as fun as it is, best enjoyed in moderation. It's like casino gambling or eating street food. If you're playing the market, I just hope you're stashing some safer money in a place like Wealthfront. Wealthfront has a ton of data to show that time in the market almost always beats timing the market. You get what I'm saying? Wealthfront makes it very easy. Wealthfront's globally diversified portfolios, diversified is a really important word, automatically optimized to hit the goals you set and the risk level you choose. Plus, it does things automatically that very few people do, things like tax loss harvesting, so that you can boost your returns even when the market goes down. In fact, this has been a great time for tax loss harvesting. I hope you've been taking advantage of that. They actually invented the software to do it. You can look it up. You can also personalize your portfolio with a selection of funds handpicked by Wealthfront's financial experts. They have social responsibility funds. They have clean energy funds. They have cannabis funds. You can get into a fund that matches your interests without kind of risking your future. Wealthfront is trusted with over $27 billion in assets. I love that. That's gone up so much since we first started talking about Wealthfront. They help nearly 500,000 people build their wealth. Investopedia just named them the best robo-advisor for 2022, and the year isn't even over. Wealthfront's amazing. To start building your wealth, And to get your first $5,000 managed free forever, for life, go to wealthfront.com/twit. Wealthfront, WEALTH, wealthfront, FRONT.com/twit. Wealthfront.com/twit. And get started today. It's what I tell my kids. Wealthfront.com/twit. Interesting tweet from Jack Dorsey the other day. What'd you think of this? The days of Usenet, the IRC, the web, even email with PGP were amazing. Centralizing discovery and identity into corporations really damaged the internet, and I realize I'm partly to blame and regret it. Of course, CEO and one of the founders of Twitter. Wow.
So much in that tweet.
That is a fascinating thing to say. What do you think, Wesley?
I think, one, he's giving himself too much credit.
Jack, you didn't ruin the internet. It's okay, Jack.
Yeah, and also, the decentralized web is still not here. So it's not like, I mean, there was no clear alternatives. So I don't really understand.
He's not a big Web3 guy. He's, in fact, been very skeptical about Web3.
Yeah, I mean, he doubles with Block, his company. But
yeah, he likes Bitcoin, but he doesn't like Web3, which is interesting.
Yeah. So I don't know, feels rambly-ish. Like, are you going to give up all your money now that you feel that bad? I mean, what are you going to do? Fix it?
Dave Weiner says, Jack, it takes a big man to admit this. How about giving back to help the open web?
Yes. How about bringing back RSS to the? Well, he's not at Twitter anymore.
No,
so
but still,
really make any of those decisions.
Yeah, Twitter. In fact, wasn't Twitter? Don't they have this blue sky thing that they're doing about decentralized
Supposedly.
Twitter, like Mastodon or something, the Fediverse? By the way, the only reason I noticed this is I kind of agree with him. Those were great days. The Usenet, IRC. We still use IRC with the last man standing.
They were great days for some people. I mean, those who had access and the majority, and those who.
Well, partly it was great because there weren't a lot of people, and it wasn't open to the public yet. So that was part of its excitement, right?
It's also just, it's nostalgia, right? It's, in my day, we had to download our binaries on Usenet, and it was really slow.
Well, okay, but objectively, though, okay, when I was in high school, when like 20 years ago, we had a way where there was an open protocol messaging thing that a number of different services could use, and we could have a centralized client,
and Pigeon.
Adium and Trillion and Dedium and those, where you could be talking to your friends on all those different services in one interface. You know, even 15 years ago, we had that with iChat that was built into, Macs and Adium and all that stuff. So, I mean, there's a point where I think you're right. Like, part of it is nostalgia for sure, and people like overly being glorifying the past. But I also feel like we definitely lost something that existed when then people, and I will say Twitter didn't start out necessarily in this way where it actually
Twitter was pretty cool before Ashton Kutcher joined it.
Well, but also they were fairly open in terms of standards and protocols and things like that.
Then
they made the decision because they saw it as a competitive advantage.
It's a mea culpa. He's saying I did it.
Yeah. And then that's what I think that I'm glad that he's saying that and taking responsibility, because I feel like it's not his fault, but I feel like if all the Web 2 companies that started out really embracing the open aspects of the web and interoperability hadn't then made an about face and cut off API access to certain companies and said, oh, no, we're not going to work with these sorts of standards and we're going to silo our data streams and whatnot, then, I think that things would be a lot better and a lot different. And you might not have some of the same kind of grifters that are glomming onto, I think, a very good idea, which is decentralization.
Yeah.
Yeah, but at the same time, I think this is a tale as old as time. I mean, it's companies discovered there was money to be made on the internet.
Oh, yeah,
there was money to be made by and I agree. I feel like he's like 80% of the way there, where he's like, talking about the centralizing aspects in the corporation. He specifically says discovery and identity, but I think you could make the argument centralizing stuff into corporations running the internet was a bad idea. But to Wesley's point, what are you gonna do about it?
It was kind of inevitable.
Are you just sad now, or I don't know where that's going.
I mean, it is the way of the world. I mean, big companies tend to dominate because the economies of scale and a variety of other reasons, and they've got marketing dollars and so forth. And so, yeah, nobody wanted the internet to be run by 5 companies, but it is. Yeah, let's. What do we do now? I don't think Web3 is the answer. Or is it? No? You're shaking your head, Wesley. No.
Well, Web3 doesn't work on mobile. You're not going to have a copy of the blockchain on your phone.
Good point.
So it's. I mean,
I might have it on my monitor. You know, I've got 64 gigs.
You have 64 gigs on your
not
monitor.
being used.
Store big blockchain there.
Yeah. I think. Yeah, crying to your bag of
as
money.
Dorsey has said, Web3 is essentially concentrated in the hands of Andreessen Horowitz and the VCs who are promoting Web3.
The only way things change is if motivations change. And if it's always going to be about money, then there's always going to be a power grab where they'll try to centralize it. So there's going to be someone else who's going to have to take on that mantle. But if it's at the heart going to be for money, then no. I mean, a government might need to do it, but who's going to trust them? I mean, who would, a nonprofit, but then they'll be pushed out, and the large bags of money
There's something to remember here, though,
will push them out,
which is none of those technologies have gone away. IRC's still here. Usenet's still here. You can still put up a website, as I have over here on a little Debian
And you said
box.
Mastodon.
We have a Mastodon instance at twit.social. What if you have a glossy web that is run by the big corporations, the superhighways, and you have some back roads that eventually...
You might call it a dark web?
Like a dark, but it's not even dark. It doesn't have to be.
But it's just the web.
Yeah, it's kind of somewhere in between. But I think there's also the argument that a lot of the reason that these things are still there but aren't necessarily as well traveled is because a lot of the centralization also made things easier for a lot of people.
Yes.
And that's for good and for bad, right? Like the fact that it's just so much more accessible and that this stuff works better because the money got shoveled into it and they were able to design fundamentally a product that was much more user-friendly.
It's true. Instead of running my website on a computer in my closet, I can run it on Amazon Web Services, and it's probably cheaper and it's certainly more reliable.
Well, but I think, but it's interesting, right? Because in one sense, I agree with you, Wesley, but I am going to push back a little bit. Like, I feel like the motives need to change, sure, but I also feel like the monetary thing, I think sometimes that can change if you can prove that you can make money by doing things more openly. Case in point, even though obviously like Facebook's like whole mission basically has been to kind of create an operating system for the web, and we have created these silos. The open web beat out the online services, right? Like that was because people realized that they could make more money not being tied into those closed ecosystems. The CompuServes, the America Onlines, the Prodigies, and that sort of thing. Like the open web won big time, and lots of companies had been betting on the so-called information superhighway, and that wasn't what succeeded. It was the World Wide Web. So
bye AOL.
That was made by the government, though, right? I mean,
no. The internet was, the web wasn't. I mean, it was created by researchers,
nonprofit,
nonprofits. But my point being, like but still, you had all these big corporations who had their own vested reasons for wanting people to stay in their own siloed things, and it didn't work. Now you've had things become re-siloized, but I feel like there will always be some sort of value to. I mean, I think that's what makes the web special, is that it. Even though it can de facto be owned and controlled by a number of large groups, and depending on where you live in the world and how you have access, you might only see a certain type of it. Kind of the beauty of it is that it doesn't have to be that way. And in fact, how it spread was not that way. So, I mean, I'm not trying to be like, overly optimistic, but.
I got to say, I every time you push back, Christina, I really, really appreciate it. Because, I think you're right here. So I am going to capitulate and say, yes, if there is enough groundwork put, and it's a lot of people can have a big company and a small little newspaper get on it and find value in it. I think you are right. I think that would actually lay the groundwork for some big change. I hope that happens. I have my fingers crossed.
Well, I also think human nature is against us in our greed, it's also on our side, because humans do like small groups. They do like small, They like approachable networks. I think we loved Facebook, and I think we've turned against it now because of how it became corporatized and not as intimate and not as personal. And I do think that in the long run, things like Mastodon, our Twit social instance is small, but we all know each other. It's a community, and people like communities. And so what's happening is the big companies are developing technologies. It can trickle down to these smaller companies. We have Discord now instead of IRC. The Discord is a great community. And Discord, to their credit, has resisted. Microsoft tried to buy them, and they said no. They're still kind of small and private. At some point, you know what's going to happen. They're going to become big business, and then we'll move on to something similar. But I honestly think that that's good. I think humans' natural tendency to form community will find a way. And that's a good thing, I think.
Yeah, I mean, I think I would agree with that. I mean, I find the most interesting conversations I have every day on the internet are generally in like small Slack communities than in a big Twitter, and like on Twitter. I've waited out of Twitter for the most part because it's like,
but Twitter
it's very difficult to get anything done.
It has this way of allowing you to form a community within the big thing, and
it still has its value, but it is definitely feels more like,
it's more promotional now.
Drinking from the fire hose too, right? Like it's just and it's all over the place, and it's harder to do nuance, and it's harder to do.
Did Twitter Blue help? Did it make you feel a little more at home or anything? Or no,
just sad, just blue.
Sad. It's just blue. Am I blue?
Mine is purple.
Oh yeah, I made mine purple too. How nice. Yeah, your icon, right? Yeah.
Yep.
That's what you're paying the $3 a month for, or whatever. Yeah.
It is
purple
honestly,
icons. Yeah.
Honestly, I'm paying the $3 a month because I felt like I've gotten so much out of Twitter
They
over
deserve
the years.
it. Yeah.
I was kind of like, after everything that Twitter has given me, I can give them $36 a year.
I was really. There are times when I'm really glad I have Twitter. For the most part, I'm kind of with you, Dan. It's like I feel like either I'm having a stroke because there's so many terse inside jokes going on. I don't know. I feel like I don't get it, or it's just a fire hose of nonsense, or a lot of promotional stuff. And sometimes, a lot of times, Twitter makes me angry. Like I get angry at the people who are saying the things they're saying. But then there's communal events like the Academy Awards. What an experience to be watching that live on TV and watching my Twitter stream. That was fascinating. I don't think we could have had an experience like that ever before. Do you?
I think it is interesting because it has this sort of, I think you're totally right. That live events sort of, peek into everybody's brains is unique. And the
discussion going on over the slap and the different points of view. And I think we're very informative, very valuable.
It is informative, but at the same time, it's tricky because it also opened up this door where it's like you need to have an opinion about everything and express that opinion about everything. And that is a trap.
Oh,
because you do not need to be. You do not need to be evincing your opinion on all these things, right?
I have plenty of time to have my opinions here. I'm not putting them on Twitter.
It's interesting, but at the same time, it's also very, very dangerous at times. I think.
When I look at people like Elon, I just say, get off Twitter, man. You're not doing yourself any favors.
Right.
This is not helpful to you. You can think all that stuff, all that bull hockey. Don't say it out loud, and especially don't say it out loud to the whole world.
Maybe that's why he's making his own social network.
Oh, yeah. That was another one where he's not doing that. And by the way, it's been done. I don't see a lot of people flocking to Truth Social. Right? If you're going to do something like Twitter, you need critical mass. You can't just start your own.
That's always been the trouble with a lot of the things that have tried to supplant and replace Twitter. I mean, I think Mastodon's ability to do instances, I think it lets it survive in pockets. And
it's not huge.
It's not huge.
Yeah.
And it's never going to replace Twitter because you won't get enough critical. I mean, I think back to the days of app.net, if you remember that, which also tried to sort of supplant Twitter.
Yeah.
Same here. I did as well, but it just, there was no way. And some of it is just, there's something unfathomable and unpredictable about what gets people what gets that critical mass, what causes that critical mass, right? Like if you could figure out if they could weaponize what becomes viral, everything would be viral, and then nothing would be viral. But like you can't figure out.
I think
there's no
we
way to
actually.
predict what catches
I think
on.
that already happened. Everything is viral and nothing is viral. Did that not happen?
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
There's too much
yet.
virality. Yeah. Well, there's always TikTok. My son has 2 million followers on TikTok.
Amazing.
And he is using that to slowly, gradually build a business, a persona, a presence. He was on Access Hollywood this week. I think it is amazing. I don't think he couldn't have done it on YouTube. He couldn't have done it on Twitter. He was, he's 27. He was made for TikTok.
I think technology sometimes catches up with our ability and our interests in a way that captures it so that in the time when it's released, that they're able to really hone in on those feelings of people who are thinking like, this is what I need. Just like the tablet market with Microsoft, they were too early. And it was clunky, of course.
Boy, they were all in though, boy.
But I think the same is with technology and doing the right thing at the right time with the right amount
Timing's
of people
everything.
and places. Yeah, I think all of that kind of factors into the success of something.
You see that. I mean, it's you see it all over the place. What was Dennis's location? Foursquare at South by. Just perfect timing. It just happened because of that. And then there's companies like Facebook trying to pull up the ladder. Now we've learned that they paid a firm called Targeted Victory to push stories about what a threat TikTok was to American children.
Slight correction, paying.
They're still paying them?
Oh, yeah.
Paying.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, they're still doing it. So Targeted Victory, here's some of the emails, for instance. The Washington Post got a bunch of internal Facebook emails and Targeted Victory emails. Here's one. Targeted Victory, quote, needs to get the message out while Meta is the current punching bag. TikTok is the real threat, especially as a foreign-owned app that is number one in sharing data that young teens are using. Oh, my God. This is from
I hear
a
they're
director.
really down on rock and roll, too.
Yes, right.
Those kids today with their rock
Kids
and
today.
roll.
And the staffer replies, bonus points if we could fit this into a broader message that the current bills and proposals aren't where state attorneys general or members of Congress should be focused. Yeah, pay no attention to all that problem with Facebook. Look over there, TikTok. So they're still paying them?
Yeah, this is not just a one thing. They've been clients, Facebook's paid them for several years. This is not something new. They just deploy them as needed.
Here's one. A dream would be to get stories with headlines like, From Dances to Danger, How TikTok Has Become the Most Harmful Social Media Space for Kids.
That was a Lifetime movie.
From Dances to Danger. We actually, they planted a local story here in Petaluma that kids were doing something on TikTok, some sort of door knocking thing where they listen to a song and they would kick the door and then run away. And there were stories in the local news. There were stories in the local paper. Teens could get shot because people will think they're intruders and doors might get damaged.
In Petaluma?
In Petaluma. And I asked Henry and I asked every kid I knew, have you seen these videos? And what are you talking about?
Well, then it probably comes out that like actually the rumor probably started on Facebook more than likely.
Yeah, who knows? I mean, regardless, I don't think kids. Same thing with Tide Pods. Apparently, I didn't know this. We were talking about this on Wednesday on Twig, and the whole Joan Donovan, who studies this stuff at Harvard, said the whole Tide Pod thing was made up. Nobody's eating Tide Pods. That was probably Facebook spreading misinformation or somebody. Who knows?
Oh, I think there were a number of I think that was people just like having like, oh, what about the children outrage? Like they saw some people doing some stupid stuff on YouTube and immediately like took it like 10 levels beyond where it should have been, which was like, okay, obviously don't eat liquid soap, but instead of just kind of doing that, like it became like this whole like moral panic, like, oh no, the kids are doing weird things on the internet. It's like, yeah, of course they are.
Yeah.
Like what, like, are you new? Like that's kind of what kids do always. They always do weird things.
In October.
And a lot of times they want to troll the adults. They want to trick people.
Yeah, they're
into
doing
thinking
it to
they're
make
doing
them.
dumber stuff than they
Yeah,
are.
because they're doing it because the adults are going, oh my God, oh my God.
Exactly.
Yeah, right on. That's called for the lulz. In
Can't wait
October,
for it to circle back to Dungeons and Dragons again. That's all.
Yes.
you Satanists doing the Dungeons and Dragons thing. Oh my God. In October, Targeted Victory worked to spread rumors of the Slap a Teacher TikTok challenge. By the way, the rumors started on Facebook.
Right, which is the best part, right?
In local news, touting a local news report on the alleged challenge in Hawaii. So this is what they did. They're very smart. They go to these small local TV stations who are desperate for anything. They send them an electronic press kit with video. They run the story uncritically. And suddenly it's news. And if you're lucky, it can spread.
And that hits their target demographic, which are
Old
parents
people.
or older people who
people watching
really
local news
are hearing about things. They're like, this is the only thing I know about TikTok is this one story that I see on the local news.
Exactly. Well, but not just them. Also, like local, senators. Like the guy from
because they're fielding the calls from these constituents that say, I just saw.
Right. Yeah,
I just saw that there are litter boxes now in the classrooms because kids are dressing up as cats. It's like, no,
yeah, right. Yeah.
That was a
there
funny
aren't.
one. Wasn't that
was hilarious.
hysterical?
God.
People believe anything. Stunning.
It's like, okay, just ask some questions because I'm sure there's probably one person on TikTok who is doing really weird and dumb stuff.
Yeah.
But is it a trend? Like, are we at like West Elm Caleb levels of horror and everyone just not being able to act like adults? Or is it, and also keep in mind that was grown women, not teenagers. So, some of the worst stuff we've seen on TikTok has actually not been the kids at all. Or is this just like, ridiculous things that someone who claims to be a cop is spreading in a Facebook group that then gets people up in a tizzy. And now Facebook, I have to say, they're the team that they're hiring to do this. It's pretty smart actually to then, gin up the local media and other, people on a hair trigger and be like, have you seen this? This is going to blow your mind. Definitely, put this on the news.
Please, folks.
Coming back around to Jack Dorsey's idea that this was all a mistake. So,
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
I'm buying that now.
I have to
Never
say,
mind.
I keep track of all the current trends of what the kids are doing by listening to Rocket. So thank you, Christina.
Oh,
you're very
really?
welcome.
Is that where you go? Is that?
Yeah.
So
That keeps me in the
Christina
loop.
Warren, Brianna Wu, Simone de Rochefort, I love saying her name, Simone de Rochefort, they're the experts on what the kids are up to?
I had no idea about this West Elm thing until I listened to the podcast. I was like, what?
I learned about
on?
the sweater
Okay.
from them. What's the West Elm thing?
Oh, there's this guy who dated a number of women on it was on Tinder and honestly it was a dumb thing.
Not
where
the Tinder swindler.
No.
Another one.
No, this wasn't even a swindler. This was just a guy who maybe made the mistake of talking to a number of girls at the same time when he was not in an exclusive relationship. And his name was Caleb. He worked at West Elm, and basically somebody made a TikTok. It went viral. Then people wound up doxing this poor guy, harassing him. There were like hundreds and thousands of like TikToks being done. Everybody's talking about it. It was actually pretty terrible. And again, this was all like women in their 20s who definitely should know better. And like, oh no, a guy is dating two women at once. Like, am I supposed to be upset by this? Like,
I love the
I
Tinder
don't know.
subreddit. I read the Tinder subreddit religiously just so I can think, I'm glad I'm not on the dating scene anymore.
right, exactly. You go through this and you're like, God, this just would be so exhausting to have to be dating
So exhausting.
at this era.
You people.
And the person on TikTok didn't want to out this person, so she had code names for her dates. And so she named that she met this guy. That's
she
how
called him
and
West
so
Elm?
that's how. Yes, and that's how
Oh,
he
Lord.
got the code name, and then people understood and kind of figured
it
out
out.
who it was.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So what's the moral of this? Pick better code names?
Well, the moral of this is to not like, I don't know, like
Not dox
put a mob
your-
after people. Yeah, exactly. not dox somebody because, he went on a date with you and a date with someone else. Like, I don't know, grow up. But also I think the moral is like, don't believe every viral, horrible thing you hear. Like ask a question first, because sometimes it might be true. And in that case, then we can all like have a elongated discussion about it. But if it's one of those things that just seems absurd, like kids are knocking on, it's like, okay, you know, like people putting razor blades in apples. Has anyone ever actually poisoned the Halloween candy ever?
Yeah. Right. All that stranger danger stuff. It turned out the real danger was your uncle.
Yes.
Yeah. The guy, you know, anyway.
Yeah.
You know what the real moral of this is? Listen to Rocket on relay.fm/rocket. That's the real moral of this. You guys should do a call-in. Christina, Brianna, Simone, I was told that my teacher wants kitty litter in the classroom so she can dress as a cat. Is that true? And then you could debunk it. It would be good. That'd be good. I think a call-in version of
Someone
Rocket.
needs to.
If you want to do it, Christina, let me know. I have the technology.
Okay.
We can do it here. We got.
I love it.
We got the phones. They're left over from the radio show. I am not sure I will do this. Waymo says fully driverless rides are coming to San Francisco. Would you get in a car where there's nobody else in the car and just
Ghost riding the whip?
Exactly. Ghost Rider. I think. Do you think we're ready for this?
No.
I love it, but I don't think we're ready.
Notably pessimistic about self-driving cars. I find it, as you know, it's been many, many years since I've been employed as a programmer. I did do that very early in my career, but I feel like as all of us are people who work in technology and knows what we know what goes into people designing software. It just immediately makes me more. I have this wrong running argument with my best friend from college. He's an ER doctor, and he is like super bullish on the future of self-driving cars because he sees a lot of idiots come in car accidents that have gotten themselves, you know, either because they're drunk or they're looking at their phone or whatever. And he's like, look, computers have to be better than this. And I understand where he's coming from. But as somebody who works with computers all day, I think to myself, computers are stupid. They're really dumb. And I just don't have the confidence levels in it. So that's just, I'm not convinced. I mean, I think the adding the safety features that they have done over the past several years to cars with drivers, I think has been a really positive thing. And I think there are definitely some cases where self-driving cars work, could be really beneficial, especially on highways, long drive, etc. But I live in Boston. There's no way a self-driving car is going to be able to navigate Boston streets. I'm sorry. I will put money down on that. It is a mess.
Right.
Oh, Boston,
right now,
the humans can't drive Boston.
Yeah.
No one
Right
can.
now, Tesla has the name brand of self-driving, and it has a horrible reputation. I remember the first time I got into a friend's self-driving car. It was Tank Girl, Miriam Jouar, and we were. She showed me the screen, and it showed the lines, and the lines were doing this, and this is where the car. I was like, you don't know where the line is? Like, I am not. No, let's not do self-drive. It's just one of those things where it's just like I do not trust it, and so in order for people to then gain that trust, they are going to need to tell more than saying it's self-driving. They're going to have to say, this is the technology we use. This is how far we've come. This is all the mitigation that we have done. And here are the use cases where it's optimal. Here's some that is not optimal. So people can really understand how it works, what it's good for, what it's not good for, which is the part that really needs to be defined. So people can understand, does this, just like the bad reviews on Amazon, if you are using a hairdryer in a bathtub and it doesn't work and you got shocked, I don't use a hairdryer in a bathtub. So I know that it'll be fine for me. Yeah. So there needs to be a clear understanding of when this does work and where it fails, and they need to be upfront about it before people can start trusting it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a great point. Now, I don't drive. So I would love, in theory, I would love this because I would love to be able to have a car that just drives me around that I don't have to bother with. But like Dan and Wesley.
Yeah, but you're also the only person I know who's been run over by a bus. So
well, I was hit by a car and thrown under a bus.
Okay,
but
there you go.
But the self-driving car probably would have. But that probably would have stopped, right? Like I think the lidar there would have been paying attention to the road and not his phone, like the person who hit me. Regardless,
True.
Like
there you go. That's a perfect example. You're right.
It is actually and I feel like I have hopes. I think the technology is going to come around. Are we there yet? I don't think we are. But I actually think that, Wesley, I think what you said was perfect, which is there are going to be some use cases where I think this would really work. Like, I think that on large stretches of highway where we know exactly what's going on and we have a really clear vision on this, I think that it could be really good. And in that case, like, this is one of the reasons why big trucking has been one of the areas where they've experimented the most with self-driving cars, because you could drastically change how much you can deliver things by, not having to always have like a human manned car that the hours that the truckers do already are pretty brutal, but this would allow even more things to happen in that way. But in places like Boston or in other places where you might have really difficult to kind of predict traffic patterns, or you have a lot of like pedestrian mix in where people don't always follow the correct rules. I don't know if it's the right avenue for that.
And then there's the tweet from Elon yesterday. There will come a time in the future where people will be surprised we let practically anyone drive a 2-ton death machine anywhere they want.
I mean, he's not wrong.
He's not
wrong.
No.
But he
doesn't have the answer either.
Angle.
Yes.
Yeah.
He's hoping we'll have the answer.
There's a lot of, there will be a lot of people who, from the bike advocacy or public transportation advocacy, who would say the exact same thing.
Yeah.
They're just coming at it from a very different side of things.
Yeah. Let's see. What else is going on? Maybe we'll take a little quick break because it is getting late and I don't want to keep you guys too late. But one more break and then we'll wrap it up with our esteemed panel, Christina Warren and Wesley Faulkner and Dan Morin. It's really fun to hang out with you guys on a Sunday evening. Our show today brought to you by Podium. I think one thing we learned during the pandemic is that people don't want to talk on the phone. They want to text. Texting is great. There aren't enough hours in the day to waste time playing phone tag. And if you're a business owner, the list of customers you need to reach out to isn't getting any shorter, especially as business starts to get better. That's why local businesses everywhere turn to Podium. Podium makes every interaction as easy as sending a text, so everything that makes your business great can get done faster. I remember leaving the dentist. I was so surprised. As I was going out the door, I got the text, which I always love. Your appointment is scheduled for the day with, and if you do it on the iPhone, I just click the link and it adds it to my calendar. And then a text saying, leave us a review if you had liked our service. Awesome. By the way, a great way to get reviews on Yelp or Google or wherever by just texting your customer as they leave. Much more likely to respond if they've had a good experience. Podium can collect money. You can pay your bills with Podium. You can make bids. More and more, I don't call contractors or repair people or plumbers. I just text them, and the one that answers the fastest is the one who's going to get the job. And generally, the one that answers fastest is the one using Podium. A single inbox means it's easy to respond. All your employees will like it. It's not just a better way to communicate. It's a better way to do everything, not just gathering reviews and collecting payments, but marketing your customers. It's all as easy as pressing send. There's nothing comes even close. So you'll be in touch with your customer better. You can also put it on your website, which is great. And again, a single inbox means you don't have to deal with a lot of different inputs. You can handle it all in one Podium inbox. You not only free up time, you'll grow your business, you'll get more done. With Podium, you'll close deals with customers before the competition even has a chance to call them back. Join the more than 100,000 businesses that already use Podium. I bet you know a few businesses that do. In your neck of the woods, they streamline their customer interactions. And you know what? Many of them are doing it free. That's right. You can get started free. podium.com/twit. If you sign up for a paid Podium account, you get a free credit card reader. So either way, whatever works for you. There are some restrictions, of course. Podium, podium.com/twit. It really is the easiest way to stay in touch. And you know what? Speaking as a customer, it's the best way. I far prefer a text message from a business. I don't want to call. And email, forget it. I'm never going to see it. So don't even bother. Hey, we had a great week this week on Twit. You want to watch a promo? Too bad. You're going to hear. It's funny. I don't know if other people are noticing it, but I have just really noticed that everything and the stress levels are much higher. There's a lot of tension. interactions. Oh, giant animals are appearing.
Giant cats.
Taking over. And I think, honestly, your frame rate went down quite a bit about 5 minutes ago. Was Sriracha sleeping on the vents again?
Yes, he was.
Yeah. So Sriracha is a great way to test throttling in laptops.
Previously on Twit. Security Now.
I completely agree that Kaspersky has never given us any cause to mistrust them. That's a misdirection, I think, that misses the point. Where they are is the point.
iOS Today.
Rosemary Orchard and I thought it was time to pull out some accessories, some gadgets, some gizmos that we've been using for our iPhones, our iPads, all of our devices. It's accessory time on iOS Today.
This Week in Google.
The moment that you're searching for something online and is the moment where you're most susceptible to misinformation because you're in an information seeking mode and you know that you don't know. And that's where the companies play an incredibly important role.
Twit. Some assembly required.
Wonderful week, and we thank all of our hosts and our contributors. Had a lot of fun. I will end with this product. I want somebody to use this on the next Twit. The Dyson headphones that double as an air purifier. If you really want to scare people as you're walking around, get the Dyson Zone air purifying headphones with active noise cancellation.
Get over here.
Yes, exactly.
I was going like a Sith Lord or something, but I like that too. That's also pretty solid.
I like that. Get over here.
That's
I like that.
cray-cray. That is wild. Here's all the prototypes that they've been working on. It's interesting that the one they came up with, by the way, I wish they had released this because I would have worn
Totally.
this. It's got a tube and all sorts
That's
of
very retro.
very retro. They sort of cleared it up. They actually they tested this in Beijing, where the air quality is so abysmal. You do need these, so maybe I shouldn't mock this because there are places where, it's like smoking a pack a day.
Still mock it a little though, because it looks ridiculous.
I will never knock innovation. I probably won't buy any of them, but still. Dyson Zone.
I want to mock it, but I also realized I just did the math. I've spent like $1,000 on the air wrap and on the hair dryer.
There you go.
Actually, no, I've spent more than that because I got my sister the air wrap as well. So I can't even I want to mock this, but I also know what I've spent money on. So.
Actually, Lisa loves her hair dryer. I haven't seen
they're the best.
I should get the air wrap. That's interesting.
Yeah, it's great.
You like
They're both great. I got the air wrap first, and because it also includes like kind of a smaller version of the hair dryer, and I liked it so much that when they had like a sale, I got the hair dryer as well, and it's so much faster. And like if you have long hair, they have different attachments and stuff. It's really good, and it makes it so smooth. I have to say, like I never thought that I would spend that much money on hair dryer stuff. A++.
Christina, would this do anything for me? Could this help me in any way?
No.
For you, no. For your wife, though, it might be one of those
it's
things.
It's a perfect wife gift.
Oh, 100%.
Yeah.
Wife, girlfriend, like, or anybody who has like longer hair, like.
There's no blades.
It's
just it's one of those tunnels that just blows air somehow, hot air. But so she has this. She apparently really likes it. So yeah, maybe I'll get her the wrapper. That's good. I'm always thinking. Christina, still in the shoe market? What are you buying these days?
Yeah, I'm still in the shoe market. I haven't bought anything recently. I think it's been kind of a quiet shoe period for me the last couple of months.
You no longer have to help people get PlayStation 5s or Xbox Series X's. I know
exactly.
Doing a lot of that. Yeah.
No. Now finally, and graphics card prices are going down too. So finally, I'm like, okay,
hallelujah.
I have some breathing room. I don't have to do this. I know, right?
Yeah.
It's only been however long. Yeah.
Oh, I always like to keep up, though, on your shoe purchases. I guess I'll have to listen to Rocket. Relay.fm for Rocket. And are you going to do videos for GitHub?
Yeah. So I don't have any up yet, but if you want to go ahead and go to youtube.com/GitHub, there will be videos coming very soon. And we're going to be doing a lot of content, so it's going to be great.
Is there any move to get you to do an introduction to Git? Just the technology, the commands, all that?
I think that I'm not sure. I think that would be really good, though. I think that's a really good idea. I'll bring that up
GitHub has
next week.
an app that's supposed to, make it easy. But I think ultimately it's good to understand the command lines and how I use it on the command line.
Yeah, no, I do too. And I mean, it's funny because actually before I even joined, like I'd been thinking about creating some sort of course about using, Git and version control in general for non-technical roles.
That'd be nice.
Git Markdown, because there are a lot of people who I think could really benefit from it, but who are doing things, and especially like technical product managers and people like that who might be working with engineers but aren't necessarily doing the coding themselves. There can still be a ton of benefits of using version control stuff. So I'm hoping to do something around that.
I do like that idea of using Git for non-programmers, other ways like novelists or or your dot files or whatever. I mean, it's not just programmers. Yeah,
it's not. It's
I use
not.
it like
so
crazy.
I think, yeah. So that's a good idea. I'll bring that up and see where they are in terms of their kind of introductory content. There might already be people doing things like that. I don't know, but that's a really good idea. But yeah, we will be doing videos and of course always highlighting community projects and whatnot. Oh, I will plug this real quick. A show that I had done at Microsoft called The Download, which was kind of like the developer news of the week. We are actually going to be bringing that over to the GitHub YouTube channel. It'll be expanding its scope a little bit, be more open source stuff, and so the tenor might change a little bit, but the same style and same sort of thing will be coming.
You know what?
To
As
GitHub.
an open source fan, I am thrilled that you're at GitHub. I think that is a perfect match for you.
Thank you.
YouTube.com/GitHub, GitHub.com. Honestly, don't tell them this, but the free tier is really great.
It is. It's fantastic.
You don't really need to pay for it. Yeah. So, I mean, I have a lot of public. You have to have public. I think you only have a limited number of private repositories.
No, it's unlimited private repos.
It's unlimited privite. And then, so really a lot of fun.
For most people, for most teams, even like the free plan is great. If you need more GitHub action minutes or some other things, there are some reasons to pay. But honestly, at this point, like I've paid for the professional pro plan $48.
I did for a long time, and
I've done it for the last few years, and I honestly now I don't have to because I get it for free, which is nice. But I was doing it before just because I was like, well, I'll do this, and then in the back of my mind. Well, right, and I say that, and then I'm like, okay, but it's owned by, you start trying to do the rationalization.
You don't need the money. Is that what you're saying?
That's what I'm saying, right? Kind of.
No, I want to support them. I love GitHub. I actually use them. I use a GitHub gist for my OpenPGP proof. So there's all sorts of things you can use it for. It's just amazing. Really good. I'm really glad to see you there.
Thank you so much.
And I'm always glad to see you here. Thank you, Christina Warren. Same for you, Wesley Faulkner. Thrilled to have you on, head of the community. Single Store, is it singlestore.com?
Yes, it is. Singlestore.com.
And if you're a developer and you're looking for a good database, the database for the data-intensive era, you need Single Store. And if you want to join the community, this is the guy right here, Wesley Faulkner. It's great to see you.
I believe we're still doing $500 worth of free credits in a new account. So you don't need a registration code or anything like that. But
that's nice.
Start playing with it. Yeah.
Nice. I wish I had some use for data. I'll have to find some data and store it there.
Well, you have there's data sets to play with, so you can just load
for
those
data
into
science
the database.
kind of thing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So if you want to just start tinkering, you don't have to worry about pushing your own data. You can load example data sets.
I have been I'm probably going apostate, but I've been a long time Lisp and Scheme fan, and I'm finally going to break down and go back to Python because of all the data stuff, and I think maybe I'll be playing with your stuff.
And
nice.
if you've heard or you currently use MySQL, it's MySQL Wire compatible. So it's a drop-in replacement for if you're using MySQL.
Oh, I've used MySQL for years. Very nice. Thank you, sir. Great to see you.
Thank you.
Do you have a Komodo dragon or anything behind you? Anybody in the room with you? No large lizards.
We have less animals, unfortunately. But I do have a podcast I would love to promote. It's currently pinned to my Twitter account. So if you go to twitter.com/Wesley83, I have a passion not just for animals, but also with advocacy of neurodiversity and neurodiversity in the workplace specifically. And I was lucky enough to be interviewed for a podcast talking about that. And so I really talk about my journey, personal journey through the space as a person who has had challenges with getting accommodations at work.
Nice.
And so this podcast is very wide-ranging in talking about if you're an HR professional or if you're an employee, how you can get some of the service you need to get the accommodations to make sure that, neurodiversity and that topic is kind of still just beginning to grab hold, and people are really understanding what it takes to make a place more inclusive for people like me. And so I talked about it in that podcast. It's really close to my heart. So I really hope that I can help spread the awareness. And one personal giant win was that the Department of Labor picked this up and included it in their newsletter this week.
Nice.
Which is really big. Nice. So it's pretty awesome.
This is from P-Works Future of Work podcast, and it's again on Wesley's Twitter, which is twitter.com/Wesley83. Wesley 83. Yeah, if it weren't for the neurodiverse, none of the stuff we enjoy would be around, to be honest. All the greatest thinkers, poets, scientists, and artists in our society have been neurodiverse because by their nature, they think out of the box.
This specific show would be 25% less people.
Right there. Right there. Exactly. Thank you, Wesley. Always great to see you. Really appreciate it. And Dan Morin, so nice to see you. sixcolors.com. You also write for Macworld. And you do a little writing on the side. You got a little novel in the lower drawer of your desk, or 2 or 3. Too many. Do you write every day?
I try to. This year, I was struggling a bit during the pandemic, but I found something that worked for me great this year, which is every weekday I do 1,000 words in the morning.
Smart.
And it's not like a ton. Like I know people who do more than that, but
that's
like
a page,
it's something I can hit. It's something I can hit every day.
Yeah.
And it's really worked. Basically, I haven't missed a day since January 1st, and I feel great about that.
I think that's how you get good at anything. You do it every day.
Yeah, it certainly helps.
And of course, Clockwise, and there's a kind of some changes going on at Clockwise, I hear. Am I right? Is that a secret?
I don't know. What have you heard?
Oh, never mind. I don't know. I know nothing. Dan and Micah do a great podcast where you get 4 people, 4 tech topics, and 30 minutes. It's kind of the opposite of Twit.
Yeah, it's. I think we distill it, and I sure it's tough for Micah to like bounce back and forth between those worlds of the shows where he can spend a long time talking about stuff and the shows where he's got to hit that mark. But it's that show's been a lot of fun. We've done that for a long time now, and we really enjoy it.
Really great show. I was on it once, and I found it very difficult to do anything in this much time. Wait, what are you, nuts? Another great Relay FM podcast. Thank you so much for being here, Dan. And good luck with the book. If you go to dmorin.com, you can pre-order. It's coming, Volume 3 of the Galactic Cold War, or whatever it is. The Galactic Cold War saga? Cycle?
Series? Whatever you want to call it.
No, I like saga.
Saga's good.
Cycle's good too.
It's got a good expansive sound to it. Yeah.
It's the cycle. Well, if you write 100 of them, it'll be a cycle. I don't know what it'll be.
If I write 100 of them, I might be dead.
It'll be something. Thank you so much for being here, all 3 of you. We do Twit every Sunday, around about 2:30 p.m. Pacific, 5:30 Eastern, 21:30 UTC. You can watch live on a Sunday evening. Just go to live.twit.tv. There's audio and video streams there. Chat live with us at irc.twit.tv, or join us if you're a member of Club Twit in the Discord. We not only chat about shows in the Discord, but Club Twit members talk about all kinds of things, including coding and anime, crypto, movies, TV, music. It's really a great hangout. It's, in fact, one of my favorite places. This is a perfect example of what a community can and should be. $7 a month gets you ad-free versions of all of our shows, access to the Discord, the Twit Plus feed with shows we don't even put out, like our Untitled Linux show. That's available on the Twit Plus feed. Stacy's Book Club. Paul Thurrott's Ask Me Anything, which we did earlier this week, is up there. Jeff Jarvis's is coming soon. Ant Pruitt's our community manager. He's been doing a great job. So please go to twit.tv/clubtwit. It really helps us out. And join Club Twit. Thank you for being here. Get your show at twit.tv, of course. After the fact, all of our shows are available on demand at twit.tv. On YouTube, every show has its own YouTube channel. And, of course, you can subscribe on your favorite podcast player. If you do have a podcast player that lets you leave reviews, we're competing really hard with Clockwise and Rocket, so you please leave us a 5-star review. We're desperate. We'd appreciate it. I think, is it next week or the week after, the 17th anniversary of the founding of the Twit Network? 17 years.
Wow. Oh, my gosh.
We've been doing this. And Ashley in our marketing department said, we're going to have a big party, right? I said, talk to me in 3 years. We'll have one on the 20th. We'll do a big party. So thank you, everybody. We'll see you next time. Another Twit. For 17 years, I've been saying this. Another Twit is in the can.